Beach Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock on Sunday, the 21st of January. Today, well, it's another day and another weather warning, as the Met Office warns Storm Isha could bring heavy winds and rain right across the country.
Craig Snell will keep us updated this morning with your weather forecast.
Good morning. Storm Isha will bring plenty of wind and rain today across the country. Warnings are in force. Find out all the weather details in a little bit.
Also today, Jeremy Hunt has compared himself to tax-slashing former Chancellor Nigel Lawson as the government teases the prospect of tax cuts in the upcoming budget.
And 3 days out from the New Hampshire primary, Donald Trump, Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis are making their final pitches for the Republican Party primaries.
Aidan's got your sport this morning?
Yes, indeed. Good morning. The self-proclaimed big dog is back. Ivan Toney made a winning return to the Premier League after his 8-month betting ban. Elsewhere, Arsenal hit Palace for 5. And at the Australian Open, Cam Norrie flies the flag for Britain.
Aidan, thank you. Good morning. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Quite like it when we can start off talking about the weather, because I was going to mention the weather anyway.
About it anyway, yeah.
Terrible driving down this morning, wasn't it?
I bet it was. I mean, you certainly feel the wind. You definitely can feel a change in the temperature. It's not as bitingly cold.
No, it's not.
And it's wet. And yes, you can feel the wind whipping up now. It's going to get nasty. And my big question to you
yes,
is how do you stop? I've got cushions on my patio furniture, right? How do you stop them blowing all over the place in this sort of weather?
You have to put them in the garage.
Yes, you have to, except I haven't got one.
Oh.
I've got a shed.
Well, put them in the shed.
Well, that's what I have to do, yeah. But...
Ours haven't blown off.
Why don't yours blow off?
They're quite heavy. They haven't blown off yet.
Heavy?
They might have to move them before the end of the day.
But I think in Storm Isha that you might find them blowing around the garden a bit.
You never know where they might land.
Last storm, mine blew about the garden a bit, and one of them landed in a sort of small deposit that the dog had made. And I haven't had time. The weather's been so awful.
Oh, have you not cleaned it?
Have you had time to go out and sort of hose it down or anything? Well, you wouldn't hose it down in the ice and snow, would you? Just create an icicle. So I didn't know what to do, but now it's going to be bad again.
Yes. You might just have to wait till the summer.
Tie them down in some way.
What, the dog or the...
Both. Oh, dear.
Terrible, isn't it? No, I don't know. I've no clear answer apart from just putting them in your shed.
Maybe you have.
Anyway, it's the least of our worries, isn't it? Because the Met Office has actually issued an upgraded amber wind warning for large parts of the UK.
Yeah, Storm Isha is just the latest named storm, and it is set to bring heavy rain and heavy winds, apparently up to 80 miles an hour, which sounds big deal.
Weather journalist Nathan Rao is here. Morning, Nathan.
Good morning.
Go on, fill us in.
I know. Here I am again. More bad weather on the way. Yes, Storm Isha is on the way today, and she is going to arrive in a very bad mood.
Where's she come from?
She is coming from across the Atlantic. Quite interestingly, this storm is being dragged over by the jet stream, which is being strengthened by a cold snap in America. But it is the jet stream once again which has gone into its Atlantic stormy position, and that is bringing Storm Isha in today. She is currently sort of spiralling around the west coast of Ireland.
So what is it that we've been feeling this morning? Is that this is just the very edge?
You're feeling the very edge. Now, Isha is a low-pressure system. She's a deep low-pressure system, very similar to the other 8 named storms we have had this autumn, this winter. And around those are the isobars, and they are starting to move into the UK. So you're feeling the start of Isha. But the warnings, the Met Office warnings, specifically the amber warning, which is a level 2 warning for the more severe winds, which they're talking about up to 85 miles per hour. That is the Met Office. I've seen some independent meteorologists talking of 100 miles per hour on the very fringes. This looks like this storm is going to give the entire country quite a thrashing. It's not.
It's obviously going to be nasty for anyone living near the coast.
Yeah.
I mean, you only have to look at the pictures we're showing at the moment, the waves crashing up. But is it the sort of storm that's going to blow tiles off your roof and chimney pots off your roof?
Yes, I think it is. Now, this is the sort of storm the last storm we had was Storm Henk, which was before Christmas. That was really across the south of the UK. And I was actually having a look back at all the storms this morning to come in for you and sort of see how bad it is. And I was looking back to Storm Eunice in February of last year, which was the big one that tore the roof off the O2. And that was the last storm that seemed as... It's not going to be as bad as that. That had a red warning from the Met Office. There is no red warning from the Met Office. I must point that out. But in terms of widespread winds and the amber warnings for wind that the Met Office put out, this looks like a very, very windy spell of weather that might cause the sort of damage that you're talking about. And also, you'll see a lot mentioned in the press and everything, this danger to life. You know, that is one of the things that the Met Office do warn about. And we were just looking at pictures of the coastal waves crashing over. Don't go walking down coastal pathways today, because that is where the real danger is. If you're driving and you're out and about, look at the warning areas and look at where it's going to be worse, because there is going to be flying debris. The good thing is we're in winter, so the trees are not in full leaf, were we to get a storm like this in August. Yeah. That said, there are some very, very strong winds coming later today. The amber warnings and the yellow warnings are for later on the day as Storm Isha moves across the UK and off up to Scandinavia into the early hours of tomorrow. But right through this afternoon, this evening and into the early hours of this morning, Storm Isha is going to do her thing, and then we have another one on the way.
What?
Oh, crumbs.
You weren't expecting that, were you?
I wasn't, no.
No, Tuesday, really up until midweek Tuesday, there is another low-pressure system moving in. It has not been named by the Met Office yet.
Jeff.
Jocelyn, it would be Jocelyn if it were to be named, which it hasn't. I get into a lot of trouble about if I say it, you know, if I hint that it hasn't been named yet. But it's looking like a strong one.
What is the significance then of it being named?
The Met Office,
it's a big deal.
Yeah, the Met Office tend to name the storms depending on the impact they're likely to have. So if they think that the wind strengths or the rain are going to be such that they will have an impact enough to cause widespread problems, they will issue a name for that storm. It's like when they issue the wind warnings. They look at the impact it's going to have. And I think it's also a bit of sort of getting a grip on the storm, because years and years and years ago, when I used to write about storms, storm names were up for grabs for whoever could name them first, and it stuck. Then they get the name. Then the Met Office sort of walked in and said, we're going to name all the storms and then issue the names as and when they come along. But it's really based on the impact. And it's sort of, if you can give it a name, we are all talking about the same thing. So there is another wet and windy period of weather coming in through the start of next week. No storm name for that yet. I personally wouldn't be surprised to see another storm name before Wednesday. Well, let's watch this space. But take care, because some very nasty weather on the way today.
Yeah. OK.
Well, maybe it augurs well for a
But it will get milder. It is getting milder.
The
that's true.
is getting milder, yeah.
4 degrees it was for me this morning. I thought, well,
instead of -4 the other day.
I let the cat out.
Yeah. And interestingly, start of next week, we could get into double figures.
Really?
The wind's coming in from the southwest.
But does that go with a storm?
Yeah, because where it's coming from. So what we've had the Arctic coming down and high pressure keeping that cold, clear skies and Arctic air coming down. The Arctic is retreating. This is coming in from the southwest. And with that, we're getting southerly winds, and that is going to raise the temperatures. And looking at some of the charts, I'm looking at double figures at the beginning. I mean, in the wind, because it's going to be windy, it's going to feel cooler. I mean, you know, you're not going to be out lounging on your cushions if you manage to save them all during the storm, Anne. But
keep you posted on that.
If you do, let me know.
What I'm going to do.
OK, Nathan, thanks very much.
Thank you.
If you don't need to go out today, don't.
No.
Especially if you're a bit, dodgy on your legs, on your feet. Definitely don't go out.
Stay in and watch GB News.
Yes, with a hot cup of tea. Yeah. Well, we'll tell you all about the Chancellor Now, here's something to whet your appetite. He's teased potential tax cuts in the spring budget to relieve pressure on families.
Isn't that nice of him? Ahead of the budget in March, he said the government's plan of prioritising tax relief is working and they will stick to it.
Well, with the Tories well behind in the opinion polls, could this be the vote-winning budget they need ahead of the general election?
Joining us now to discuss this is Conservative Home's local government editor, Harry Phibbs. Morning, Harry. Do you think we will be convinced in time to make any difference at all to the Tories' election prospects?
Morning. Well, I think it's important for the Conservatives to start by acknowledging that we've got a very high level of tax, we've got record level of tax, record level of spending, and that's been a great burden to the economy, which has meant that we've had low growth. And I think there's no point in them denying that, and that has disillusioned a lot of natural Conservative supporters. But I think if that is acknowledged, it's also quite reasonable if they say that we're now going to turn a corner, we're now going to start having cuts in tax, we're now going to try and get high economic growth, and to look at other countries where that has been achieved. I mean, Jeremy Hunt's article in the Mail on Sunday, in a way, was repeating his message from Davos, the World Economic Forum, and possibly he took a leaf out of the new Argentinian president, Javier Milei, who gave a quite uncompromising message that a free market is a more effective method of economic growth and reaching prosperity than corporatist state intervention. So I think it's a welcome signal of a change in direction, but there's no point pretending that the record so far has been quite different, and so there's no point denying that when we start from a bad place.
In terms, look, you get a feel-good factor from it all. If it were to happen, a lot of people want it. A lot of traditional Conservative voters would want it. What would it do in terms of revitalising the economy? Because that's got to be the whole point of this. If it doesn't lead to growth, what's the point?
Oh, I think it's as Jeremy Hunt said, it's clear from examples around the world that if you have a low tax economy, small state, I mean, it's also important to try and avoid too high a regulatory burden. But then those countries that adopt that model have higher economic growth than those who don't. That you need to have incentives, you need to be open for business, to say that you celebrate and reward innovation and wealth creation, rather than having a policy based on envy and a big state. So the words are accurate, and if that is the direction that we start going in, that's fine. But for it to be radical, then he will need to start cutting public spending. He might get lucky a bit in terms of interest rates falling, because a huge item of public spending, of course, is interest on the national debt. And so if that starts falling a bit, that gives a bit of room for tax cuts. But he does also, I think, need to look more generally at public spending and the appalling extravagance across much of the public sector. I know when I'm on your programme, I always mention quangos, which I think gets neglected, not just billions, but hundreds of billions spent on quangos. So there's lots of savings in public spending that could be made, but to have bold tax cuts, we need a bold plan to cut public spending, and we're not there yet.
No, I mean, and there's no doubt what he's hinting at is bold. In fact, he's written in the Mail on Sunday, or he's done an interview for the Mail on Sunday, and even the Mail on Sunday calls it a gung-ho article that he's written, and their front page there is saying that what he's basically doing is trying to emulate Nigel Lawson and sort of kickstart everything and make it, as it did for Nigel Lawson, make it the election-winning budget or tax cut programme. Is that even possible at this timescale?
Well, Nigel Lawson is a good example because he cut tax rates and then got sufficient economic growth that the tax revenue went up. So rich people, instead of paying 60% of their money in tax, he cut it to 40% of their income going in tax, and this was something that attracted people and motivated people, and ended up raising more revenue. People didn't go abroad if they wanted to succeed, and they didn't rely on endlessly trying to come up with accountancy wheezes to try to avoid tax. So it ended up with more revenue, and that's the path to succeed, is to have lower, simpler tax rates. So he could still do it. I think if we have an election in November, there would still be time to actually say that this wasn't just rhetoric, that he was delivering. But I think that that people will understandably be pretty cynical about now, and they'll be looking for action. And the rhetoric is fine. The rhetoric is welcome, but it won't be enough to convince people unless and until he actually delivers on it.
OK. Harry, good to talk to you. Thank you.
Let us know what you think. Do you think it's Tories suddenly acting like Tories? That's how some people will feel it. Others will think this is just cynical, isn't it?
I just don't know if it's a big gamble. But I tell you what, there's lots of evidence to say, and the left hate it, of course, but the idea that the flatter taxes are, the more revenue you generate.
How do you mean flatter?
As in not the huge differentials between the tax bands. And then you generate more revenue. So, in fact, you lower tax rates but get more money in because people don't try to legally avoid it.
Yeah, but if he's not going to do that until March, you think still that election for May? I mean, there's not enough time to make a difference, is there?
Yes, I think there is. Because it's not about people feeling a difference in their pockets immediately. It's about people... Because probably what you'd do with that is you'd say, this is what we're going to do in July if you vote for us. OK. Wouldn't it?
Is it enough to convince you? I mean, we get so many people emailing in saying, I've had enough of this lot, and thinking of reform and other things like that.
But if there's a significant tax cut and they implement it immediately, Labour wouldn't come in and then just ditch it, probably, because that would be seen as a very bad move, and it'd be what they'd be asked about in the run-up to the election. But if you say, this is what we will do post the election, immediately after the election, then that's a tempting... You sort of think, oh...
Let us know what you think.
The other thing I wanted to mention, Labour, in this, because they've had their green growth plan, 28 billion, which they sort of then have delayed a little bit and all the rest of it. Now, it was around in the papers yesterday, The Times reporting that apparently Labour's planning to drop that altogether.
I thought they were reaffirming their commitment to net zero.
Well, yes, but it's not about net zero necessarily. You could still reach net zero in other ways. But the 28 billion green growth plan looks like it's going to go. In which case, but that was their entire growth plan. So then what are they going to grow the economy with if they don't have it? That's a question that needs to be answered. Yesterday, they were denying that it was being axed or that they were looking at axing it. But the Times claiming it is, and I'm sort of...
Have you seen what Sadiq Khan is up to as well?
Oh, I did see a headline somewhere.
There you are, front page of The Observer.
Oh, it's all Brexit. He's gone back to Brexit. He's gone back to
Brexit, and he's saying we must free our young people from Brexit work and travel ban. He's basically saying, all right, well, for our young people at least, let's relax. Or find a way that young people can move around freely within Europe.
Youth mobility with EU countries. Well, that's fine. The idea our young people can all have much more freedom around Europe, should they want to do it.
Sort of pre-Brexit style freedoms. Yes. I don't know how they would agree it with the other countries.
No, but that also means, of course, that young people have to come here from Europe.
It does.
So it's a semi-open door policy, isn't it? Which is exactly what it was all about stopping.
Yes, I know. I know.
So he's not helping himself, is it? Well, he might be helping himself in terms of the London vote, the London mayor, but he's not helping Labour in terms of the
it certainly will reach out very well to his fan
His
base.
constituency,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
But Red Wall voters?
What do you think? Would you make a special,
How do you
free
even-
up? You'd
how
have
do
to
you
have.
even do it?
Young people would have to have a special passport of some sort.
Yeah.
Another passport. Gosh,
I don't think it's
going to work.
Let's have a quick look at some of the other stories heading into the newsroom at 6:18, and an investigation is looking into how two British warships
This is unbelievable
collided
to watch.
at a port in Bahrain.
You literally see one
Oh,
backing into another.
if you're old enough, think HMS Troutbridge and the Navy Lark.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yes.
You'd have to be very old.
Yeah, well, thank you. Footage on this social media shows HMS Chiddingfold reversing into HMS Bangor.
Almost knocking it out of the water. It's incredible.
The minesweepers are part of the UK's long-standing commitment to protect merchant shipping in the region.
And what about this? Mail deliveries on Saturdays could be scrapped in an effort to reform the postal service. The regulator Ofcom is looking into how Royal Mail can evolve to meet changing consumer needs.
Not by not
That's
delivering.
a very fancy way of putting the fact they're just going to cut. It posted losses of £319 million for the first half of this financial year. Ofcom will outline its options on Wednesday, but says it's ultimately for the government to implement any changes.
And the speech by the Shadow Foreign Secretary David Lammy calling for a ceasefire in Gaza was interrupted by pro-Palestinian protesters. Mr Lammy had to make a quick exit when an activist from the Free Palestine Coalition jumped onto the stage and called for him to condemn what she called genocide in Gaza. Others disrupted the speech, attacking Labour's stance. Left hand down a bit.
Left hand out, left to rubber.
No, yes, you don't listen to it. See, I listen to the Navy Lark a lot. It's on
Very old, the
4
Navy
Extra.
Lark.
Yeah, it's from the 60s, isn't it?
Or pre-60s.
John Pertwee and
Yeah.
Leslie.
But it was radio, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The Navy Lark? Yeah, gosh. But I mean, that footage just looking... What on earth went wrong? It's like, I think they were trying to do a parallel park, weren't they? And instead, one backed into the other, and quite forcibly. There will be an inquiry.
There will be. There will be.
Yeah, here
we go.
again.
Yeah, if you're on the radio, you need to check this out on our app. It's quite a knock.
It really is a big knock, yeah. It literally is one... What are they called?
The minesweeper.
Minesweepers. Backing into another.
Oh,
Quite hefty.
That'll have done some paintwork damage.
It will have done quite
Someone
some
will be
damage.
out with the brushes today.
What on earth went wrong? Their rear view mirror wasn't working. It was all misted up, probably.
Very good. Now, Donald Trump is maintaining his lead in New Hampshire with 4 days until the Republican Party primary.
And that's according to the latest polling from the Boston Globe and Suffolk University.
Yeah, it shows the former president at 52% of likely votes, while former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley has 35%.
And then in a distant third, Florida's governor, Ron DeSantis, is pegged with just 6%.
Well, last night, Trump had this to say.
We have to win. We have to win in November, but we have to win coming up. Think of it, next Tuesday, we have to win. And we have to win in a resounding fashion. I said they got so sick and tired of me. I started off by saying, listen, we're going to win, but you got to win by big numbers. A vote for Donald Trump is a vote to fire crooked Joe Biden, kick the Biden crime family out of the White House.
Well, there you go. I mean, it just looks more and more likely, doesn't it?
It does. It's just the rhetoric. He's not... This is what annoys me. I know a lot of you are Trump supporters, but he's not said anything there. I mean, it's a clip.
Well, it's interesting he's
Doesn't
saying
actually
we've got to
say
win, but
anything.
we've got to win by big numbers. He doesn't want this, what happened last time.
But also
to happen again.
the
It
whole...
needs to be a stonking win.
The last time it was all lock her up for Hillary Clinton. Now he's calling, the crooked Biden family, the criminal family in the White House. Of course, it's not as if he's not short of legal problems.
No,
is it?
but a lot of people don't see that, do they?
No.
They just see a charismatic figure that they believe might make a difference. Shall we hear? I mean, we get one perspective, don't we, from this side of the Atlantic?
Yes.
But I wonder what it feels like at home. Joining us now is US political analyst Eric Ham. Morning, Eric. It's interesting, yes. We only see what basically the American channels broadcast here on their foreign services. What does it feel like at home? Does it feel like that Trump is just going to storm it again?
Well, yeah. In fact, it looks as though that Donald Trump has the Republican Party coalescing around him. It looks like he is on a glide path to the Republican nomination, and no one can actually stop him. But of course, there are grave concerns because Donald Trump has said some things in terms of his rhetoric that suggests that American democracy is actually right now in a chokehold if, in fact, Donald Trump becomes president of the United States.
What do you mean by that?
Well, Donald Trump has said things that he will be a dictator, but he will be a dictator on day one. He talks about how he is Americans' retribution. He talks about how he would actually make the Justice Department go after his enemies. Those are things that, and the things that he is saying, the poisoning of the blood, he is echoing Hitler, and that's a fact, and that's deeply concerning for a lot of people that are not supportive of Donald Trump and his march to the White House, or at least to the GOP nomination.
What has happened to critical political thinking in the United States amongst the general public? Because, I mean, is there any happening at all? Because, you know, if you support Trump or not, and I'm not trying to say what anyone should do, but if he's coming out with rhetoric saying he's going to use the Justice Department to, you know, go for his enemies, well, that's exactly what he's accused Biden of doing, and been very critical of Biden for doing that.
Oh, no, you're right. He certainly has been. But also, we have to remember, this is also a former president who was impeached twice, and he is now staring down 91 criminal counts. But yet he is still looking as though he is getting stronger and stronger with every GOP nominating contest. And it does speaks to where the United States is. But also, too, I think we need to recognize that, you know, there has been moments in American history where it seems as though the United States actually teetered on the brink of moving into fascism. And this is just another one of those times.
Yes, and we, of course, on this side of the Atlantic are wondering how he would treat his relationship with Britain and with Europe and with NATO.
Well, Donald Trump has made clear that he is not a fan of NATO and certainly of Europe. And that's why when he talks about make America great, of course, what comes after that is America first. So I think if we are looking at a potential Donald Trump presidency, it's going to be a presidency where Donald Trump and the United States will retreat from the rest of the world, and it will be about America first. And so where we look at President Biden, where he exactly worked with NATO and other European nations, particularly in the aftermath of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, I don't think we will see that type of international global engagement from a Trump presidency.
Why is it that in the face of this, and you know, he is posing a very real threat to the Democrats, why is it in the face of that they still seem to be on course for saying Biden's going to be our candidate? Because even with the best will in the world, even if you were his biggest supporter, you've got to look at the president and say he's not really performing at the moment. He is frankly probably just getting a little bit too frail for this.
You know, Donald Trump took his greatest weakness and he turned it into his greatest strength. The fact that he is facing 4 criminal counts in 4 different jurisdictions. President Biden has not taken his greatest weakness, of course, his age, and actually turned it into his greatest strength. In fact, every time we see him, I think it just bolsters or reinforces this idea that he may be too long in the tooth for the job. And so at some point, he's got to be able to do what Donald Trump has done with his greatest weakness and turn it into an advantage. We haven't seen that yet.
Mm.
Not likely to. I understand that Ron DeSantis has more or less thrown in the towel, hasn't he, and said that he might think about 2028, but he's probably not going to have a chance in 24.
Well, this is always going to be, I think, a very heavy lift for Ron DeSantis because he has always billed himself as a Trump clone. And what we have seen with the Republican Party is that they are not going to go with a cheap imitation if they actually have the real thing. And also we find that Ron DeSantis just doesn't have the charisma and the stature of a Donald Trump. And I think that's why we have seen, at least on the campaign trail, he has gotten weaker and weaker as the contest has gone on.
OK, Eric, really good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
It just seems like Love Island sort of thing
Yeah,
rather than an actual
except that
presidential election.
it should be serious. I mean, it's the most powerful country in the world, isn't it? Anyway, there you go. We'll see what happens. But it looks more and more like Trump again.
It does, yeah. And for those of you getting hot under the collar about questioning whether he should be, it's about that political analysis. If you want to vote for Trump, if you were entitled to vote, then fine. But still, why is nobody saying, but you're being hypocritical in what you're saying? You'd never get away. Any UK politician wouldn't get away with what he's doing without someone here going, but you've just been absolutely hypocritical. You're criticising the same party for doing what you're claiming you're going to do.
But does nobody in America point that out?
I mean,
where are the journalists in America? I think there are lots of print journalists in America who are very objective. But from the television I watch, and I watch a lot of American news channels where I can, I mean, Fox is just so blindly pro-Republican and very pro-Trump, and CNN so much the other way.
Yeah.
That I find it almost sickening to watch either, because they are so blatantly political, but only in one way.
Yeah.
And you think, where are these objective questions being asked? You just don't see it happening. I hope domestically on the channels in America they are being asked.
I hope so. Anyway, you'll be asking questions this morning about the weather. Should you go out the house today? No. Here's Craig with the details.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to today, it is turning very stormy. We have Storm Isha moving across the country as we go through the course of the next 24 hours. Initially, this morning, across parts of East Anglia, South East England, we get off to a fairly dry, bright but chilly start. Elsewhere, we're seeing increasing cloud and these outbreaks of rain moving in. The rain will be heaviest and most persistent across parts of Scotland, northwest England, and eventually into Wales too. And for many western parts, the wind's really increasing as the afternoon goes on. Technically, a very mild day for the time of year, but factor in the wind and rain, it's not going to feel anywhere near as mild as these temperatures suggest. Into the nighttime period, the wind and rain stretches right across the UK. Some very strong winds, especially across more northern and western parts, could see gusts reaching 70 to 80 miles an hour along some coastlines. So enough for some disruption as we start Monday morning. It does technically start off on a fairly mild note for the time of year, but do allow some extra time for some journeys because there could be, as I said, some disruption courtesy of Storm Isha. The winds will start to decrease as we go through a Monday morning, and really we'll see a day of sunny spells and scattered showers. Showers most frequent across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, but almost anyone will see the odd shower as the day goes on. Temperatures generally ranging between high single figures in the north, potentially double figures in the south.
Craig, thank you. And that is our top story this morning, isn't it? Keeping across all the weather details for you throughout the day.
Right, do stay with us because the sports is coming up with Aidan McGee, including all the latest from the Australian Open, where we did quite well. This is Breakfast on GB News with him and me.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Loads of you getting in touch. Where is this? Samoa. Samon. In the French Alps. That's where Tommy is watching us this morning because he's on his second week skiing.
Oh, sounds lovely. However, Anne says, good morning. Over here in Sydney, Australia, we're in a heat wave. A very hot night to come. It's 40 degrees Celsius.
Oh, that sounds oddly nice. That's probably horrific, actually.
Lots of ideas for keeping my cushions in one place during the... Ronald says get cushions with attachments that wrap round your furniture. I'll have to make some, I think. Good Garden Centres stock outdoor storage for the furniture cushions in various sizes, says John. Think of a largish blanket-type chest.
Yeah.
And then Ian says stick on Velcro cushions that will not move unless you want them to. It'd have to be very... Although that would work, actually.
Yeah, it would. It's worth a try.
It's worth a try.
And just a quick one on politics. Clive has said... I've always wondered, why don't we just have one political party, one PM, once a year, have a vote to see who will be in charge? Would save all the bickering. And whereas I think it might do. I think the issue with that is, though, if you're only running on one-year terms, you're not
never get anything done.
You need even on the 5-year approximate terms, there's not enough long thinking, I think. And on Trump, I just saw this one. Hi, you lot, from David.
Yeah.
Where breakfast lefties, apparently. Obviously, you don't like Donald. You haven't challenged your guest once, not once. Call yourself journalists. Yes, we do call ourselves journalists, David.
And we are not lefty, actually.
No, we're just in the middle. Yeah. Because that's
our job.
That's our job. And actually, he was challenged. And it was about getting his opinion on things. He's an analyst. If he was a politician, it would be a different question, but he's an analyst, therefore you're getting his opinion.
And Tom says President Trump was falsely impeached twice and cleared both times. President Trump isn't anti-NATO. He actually stated facts that America was funding NATO more than any other NATO member. Yes, but he was saying, why do we all rely on America being the world's policeman? And he would pull funds from NATO.
Yeah, which would be obviously hugely problematic. But anyway, keep your thoughts coming through. But no, we're not breakfast lefties. Thank you very much indeed. Aidan McGee has got all the sport for us this morning. I think I've got a list, Aidan. What are you going on?
Why don't you have my list?
Oh, thank you very much. That would be helpful.
Can we start with the good news from Australia?
I want to mention the Velcro first of all, about the furniture. I thought it was fantastic because I did that with I used it on my internal furniture. When I go home after a hard shift at GB News, I like to flop around on the sofa sometimes. And I found that my cushions were slipping around. Got some Velcro last year, stays in place, game changer.
Oh.
So I understand what your viewer was saying.
Stitch the Velcro on?
No, not at all. It's adhesive. It's adhesive. Yeah. It's fine. It's work though. I was doubtful. You never know what turns up in the post when you order these things online, do you?
Yeah.
No. But it wasn't expensive. But it's made a difference to my lounge. There's no question about it. A much more comfortable environment.
Well,
there you go. There you go.
Just wait for the weather to improve so I can actually get out into the garden to do something about it.
Yes.
But thank you for your thoughts.
Yes. All right. Let's have a look at Ivan Toney.
Yes, Ivan Toney.
Bang.
Yeah, 19 minutes. I mean, it wasn't the first goal of the game because Brentford fell behind, but. The self-proclaimed big dog is back. That's what he called himself at the training ground the other day. One of his teammates, Ben Mee, said to him, are you back this weekend?" As in sarcastically, because there's been so much coverage. And he said, "Yeah, big dog's back." And he proved himself yesterday. He lived up to his billing. They went behind against Nottingham Forest. He scored after 19 minutes. And you have to say, He's been out for 8 months. Now, he's not been injured, of course, but he's not been able to train with the team. He's been isolated. No one's been talking about him. He said he dreamt about this day. He said when he left the house yesterday morning, he said, when I left the house, I thought we were winning today and I'm scoring. And he lived up to his billing.
Good.
And you have to hand it to him because it's not an easy thing to do when someone's been out of the game at any level of sport
What was the
for 8 months.
reaction of the crowd, actually?
They were thrilled by it because he's made a bit of difference, and they haven't won since December the 2nd. He's absolutely pivotal to what they do. And he came back yesterday, and they're now up to 14th. They're 2 points ahead of Nottingham Forest. And if they win another game on the back of this, 6 games in the Premier League changes your season altogether, especially in the bottom half. And he was absolutely elated yesterday at the win. It was a big win at home to a rival at the bottom of the table. And as I say, for all the posturing and for all the lack of contrition, you do have to hand it to him from a sporting perspective because it's so difficult to come back after that such a long period out.
Yeah.
Now can we go on to the good news at the Australian Open?
Without doubt. I don't think this has got enough traction, actually, around the UK media.
It happened during the programme yesterday, didn't it?
It did. It's not like they can't blame the time zone.
No.
Because but this was an extraordinary performance by Cam Norrie up against Casper Ruud, a 4-set victory. When we were talking about this time yesterday, he was into the second set. He had opportunities to win at Melbourne Park, but he blew them.
Yeah, he
and
lost the second set.
It did, and you start thinking, well, is that the turning point? Is that going to play on his mind psychologically? It didn't. He rattled off quite comfortably set 3 and set 4. He's into the next round now against German.
How significant is that against Ruud?
Well, really, he's world number 11. He's world number 11. He's a 3-time Grand Slam finalist. He's still quite young. He's one for the future, without doubt. He's one of the next... We've been waiting for such a long time for this heir apparent generation of players to overtake what we knew as the top 4, Murray, Federer, Nadal, Djokovic. And they've been pretenders over the last 10, 12 years. Finally, it seems like we might get a generation led by Carlos Alcaraz. I would certainly put Casper Ruud in that group, but for Norrie to swat him aside, without doubt, and he's not had a great year either. He's done okay, but it's not been a great year compared to 2022 when he made his breakthrough at Wimbledon. He's in his late 20s now, so he's a bit of a late bloomer. But you know what? Next round, he gets through against a very tough opponent. Anything can happen after that, although we should say that Novak Djokovic won quite easily yesterday in 3 sets as well. In the previous round, I don't know if you noticed, actually, he was about to serve for the match, and someone shouted... Djokovic, sorry, yeah. Somebody shouted out, "Get yourself vaccinated." And he responded by just acing the ball down the middle to win the match. It was great to see, and he's looking imperious. And in the women's draw as well, Coco Gauff through to the quarter-final, looking good for victory.
Lovely. Aidan, thank you very much indeed.
See you in a
little bit later on. Still to come, we'll take you through the papers with Tom Slater and Nikki Hodgson.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious?
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
.43, let's have a look at some of the papers this morning. And HS2 could be back on track, says the Sunday Express, as the West Midlands Mayor Andy Street and Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham team up with private enterprise.
In the Telegraph, government crack on activists in the civil service. Diversity networks will be reviewed in an efficiency drive.
A third of children are in danger as they aren't fully vaccinated against the measles, says the Sunday Times.
And video footage has emerged of post office chiefs enjoying a lavish company bash as they were fighting wrongly jailed sub-postmasters in court. The Mirror says bosses, including Paula Venables, were filmed singing along to guest star Pixie Lott.
And the Sunday People says Prince Harry and Meghan have sent a message of support to the King and the Princess of Wales over their health scares. Though some of the papers are saying
exactly the opposite.
Exactly the opposite to that one. I should think they will have sent messages. To
I would hope so.
Let's talk to author and broadcaster Nikki Hodgson and editor of Spike, Tom Slater. Good morning, you two.
Good morning.
The government's cracking down on activists in the civil service, Tom, according to the Sunday Telegraph.
Yeah, so as ever with the sort of Tory war on woke, what it actually amounts to is not very much. So in this case, they're talking about cracking down on these kind of diversity classes, schemes, etc., which have been taking place. In the small print of it is that they want to stop them taking place during the workday, so you've got to have them at lunchtime or after work. So it's not doesn't set the heart racing as much as you would see. This is a genuine problem as far as taxpayers' money being spent on, you know, allyship training, white privilege sessions and so on. It's a ridiculous waste of money. I mean, it's not going to save a hell of a lot in the grand scheme of things, but I think you can understand why people would think this is ridiculous.
I thought most of the civil service was still working from home anyway.
Well, you can do these things on Zoom, it turns out. That's actually how a lot of this has come out, is because people have been able to get, you know, just capture the video and send it to someone at the Telegraph or elsewhere, and so a lot of this has come through. Yeah. I think the much deeper problem the civil service have is, and this has been, there's been many stories to this effect, is to the extent where this is going beyond the training. You know, you've actually got civil servants who, when certain controversial policies come up, when the Tories want to push through, say, single-sex bathrooms in government buildings, as happened with Kemi Badenoch, they find their briefs come back from civil servants, red pen, say, you can't do this, you can't do that. So it's a much deeper problem than are the schemes taking up taxpayer money in too much civil servants' time. But as ever with the Tories, they like to huff and puff a lot about these things without necessarily doing that much about it, I think.
Yeah. I did unconscious bias training with an employer over Zoom. It was the biggest waste of time.
Because it's basically just about treating people with respect, being fair, isn't it?
Yeah.
This story is really interesting, though, because I agree with Tom. It's one of those things that's kind of a lot of huff and puff and not much substance to it. I guess thinking about the intake, though, of civil servants in the next years to come, this is why they've started to do it. Because, you know, they've got to become more diverse if they want to attract different people into the system that are going to help, you know, help people be more inclusive in politics. So I understand that element. But, yeah, like Tom says, just moving it to the people that are committed to it will, of course, go in on a breakfast to go do it. I mean, it's just very silly.
Yeah. And I actually tend to think it has the opposite effect as far as I think when you've got a diverse workplace, I think people can bump along pretty well. Younger generations are more integrated ethnically, racially, religiously and whatnot. I think it can often send people in the other direction. I think it's often just it's a sort of thing which burnishes people, makes the facilitator or the head of department feel good about themselves, but doesn't do much beyond that.
Yeah, that's right, we love this story in the Sunday Express, Nikki. HS2, the northern leg, could be back, but privately funded, which begs the question, if this is doable, why didn't they do this in the first place?
This is amazing. I was very happy to see this, obviously being a northerner that's very passionate about HS2. So basically what has been happening is the West Midlands Conservative Mayor, Andy Street, and the Greater Manchester Mayor, Andy Burnham, who's Labour, they've come together and they've made a plan to get private investment to get it back on track. And it's all been kind of done secretly. I wonder why, because it makes Rishi Sunak look pretty terrible. Also, considering his constituency is in Yorkshire, you know? I mean, it really was disappointing that he shelved it. It really proves that he doesn't understand the North at all.
But they're having a meeting, I think, with the Transport Secretary now in Whitehall.
Yes, they are.
And they're going to lay out the plan, and you just wonder how is it going to work? Do we know any detail?
Well, what we know is it's based on schemes that have already run in France and Hong Kong about how they use private investment to fund these kinds of projects. The leader of the project will be Sir David Higgins, and he's the former chairman of HS2, so he's obviously very passionate about it. And Keir Starmer is obviously very much on board with it, although he has warned that there will still need to be an element of taxpayer money involved.
Yeah, we just don't know how much.
We just don't know how much, exactly. But what's really nice about this story is it proves that people on either side of the political spectrum can work together and do something for people for a change, you know?
Yes, but of course there will be those who are unhappy at the idea that, you know, it's going to be ploughing through their constituencies.
Yeah, and that's, of course, why some Tory MPs, you know, don't like it. But
the land is already bought, isn't it?
But that's the interesting thing, Anne, because apparently the land is bought, but it's potentially about to go back up for sales. They've got a little short time where they've got to get rid of that, otherwise that would turn the plan completely
that would be why
down.
they're having this meeting now.
Exactly, they have to do it now.
They find large swathes have been bought up by one Rishi Sunak.
Exactly.
Oh, fascinating.
It is.
All right, let's have a look at the Mail on Sunday. Do we call this election bribery or do we call this inspired thinking by Jeremy Hunt?
Depends what way you look at it, I suppose. I mean, Jeremy Hunt has not been known for his inspired thinking whilst he's been in post. But yes, this is, as you've already been talking about on the show this morning, this pledge for tax cuts, talks of a Nigel Lawson-style big bang in order to get the Tories somewhere towards actually scraping the next election. I do wonder how much this is actually going to cut through with people. There was a JL Partners poll about a week ago looking at Tory voters people who voted Tory in 2019. What would encourage them to vote for the Tory party again? And number 1 was small boats, number 2 was the NHS, 3 the economy, 4 inflation, and 5 cuts to income tax. So I think it tells you something about how low down the priorities are.
I don't know if people have actually had the prospect of voting for 5p off their income tax, whatever it would be. It's be very difficult to vote against it.
I suppose that's the argument. I suppose the other thing is, if depending on how these things align, I mean, if we've got a budget in March, if they go for a later election, could people start to feel the benefits, and therefore that might make them think twice. But I think it just does show desperate times call for desperate measures. But it is a bit difficult for the Tories to pose as this low-tax party when they have been presiding over the highest tax burden since the Second World War.
Yeah. It's too little too late, I think, for people. I don't think the electorate is stupid. They'll know exactly what this is. It is a bribe for, for them to vote for them. And also, he's been very woolly about the details. So he hasn't really floated which tax will be cut. He said maybe income tax, maybe national insurance. Obviously, the Tories want to go for national insurance because it promotes people being at work. And then there's always the issue of inheritance tax. It's kind of being dangled again. Maybe we'll make a cut. So the devil's in the detail, and he hasn't put any detail.
And how would Labour respond as well in the atmosphere of an election? What would they say to this?
Well, that's the key question here as well, because obviously they don't want to be charged with being kind of reckless with the finances. They tended to more or less mirror what the Conservatives are doing on a lot of these issues, to be clear. And on occasion, even trying to attack them from the right for having the high tax burden and so on. Yeah. But I think Labour, even more so the Tories, where the economy is concerned, are trying to operate as a kind of constructive ambiguity. We're not going to scare the horses, but what are we going to do? Question mark. That's kind of how they've been operating.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, we'll just have to wait and see. March 6th, isn't it? Can I have a look at this? Just fascinates me, Nikki. Ambulances are now going eco-friendly, according to the Mail on Sunday, but there are some issues.
Well, look, I love a green policy. I am pro-greening cars and vehicles and all the rest of it. But somebody has made a very silly mistake, and they've issued these eco-friendly ambulances, but lots of NHS workers are too tall or have feet too big to drive them. So they've made the most basic error of not thinking about who's going to be working in these vehicles. And actually, it's a bit more than that. That's kind of the silly angle of it. But actually, they also have less room for paramedics to stand by a patient's side, which can be critical if someone's having cardiac arrest or something.
Oh, well, you'd think so.
Exactly.
Where have they bought them from, then?
Well, I don't know. Apparently, it's a very cheap deal. So it's, again, Tories doing something on the cheap. If they spent a bit more, they could have... The old Mercedes vehicles are actually better to use, apparently. But the other thing that I do think is quite interesting about it is that, there's this discussion about women and vehicles now, about how women fit in cars and the safety of seatbelts. Basically, cars have always been designed for men. And they never cared about that, but they do care about people having size 12 feet and not being able to drive, so...
Excuse me. Well, but I'll tell you what, we are headed... What frustrates me about this is, as you will all know, young people are taller than ever,
absolutely.
bigger feet than ever,
Yeah.
all the rest of it. So any young paramedic, particularly a male, obviously, is going to have real issues.
I just wonder who designed them.
Yeah, it's just so basic to make that error and not think about the measurements of the drivers.
Yes.
Yeah. What needs to be done about women drivers then?
Well, there's a lot of research to say that seat belts and position of cars and position of seats are all basically too big for women, and they're not. You can't.
Seat belts are the most uncomfortable thing for women.
Exactly, it just doesn't work.
They're in the wrong place.
Yeah, but you can move them at the side.
but then it doesn't work.
Not enough.
Oh, doesn't it?
When
Nowhere
you're
near
pregnant,
enough.
you can't get. There's just no point.
And also, it's the headrest thing as well. That's always in the wrong place. It's too high, or it's desperately uncomfortable. You fail to see. In fact, I think it would break your neck rather than help your neck.
Absolutely, and that's what they found.
But the seat belt, even if you move the thing down, it's still too high, and it cuts across your cheek, and it's just basically.
Have you not been using your booster seat?
Well, that's the only thing you can think of now. And then it's very difficult, actually, with short legs, to move so that it's comfortable to be able to reach the pedal still. You are
It's
so
a real
tall,
problem,
you don't
Stephen.
even get it. You don't even get it, but I promise you, I'm sure most women watching will agree, it's desperately uncomfortable driving a car.
It is, and it's dangerous. That's the bottom line. So, but thankfully people are now looking at
I always think, because the seatbelt's sort of coming across there, I always think if I had to suddenly brake now, or if I crashed into something, I'd lose my head.
Yeah, but what's the alternative? I don't get what the alternative is. It's having women's cars.
No, it's
get one of these ambulances.
It's just having things that adjust to different measurements. That's all it is.
Most seats do, though,
but not at the range that is required.
No, absolutely.
It's a very simple solution, but nobody's bothered to do it yet. But we are talking about it now.
Yeah, it's funny. I do apologise. I shouldn't laugh. This is something that did this ever occur to you, Tom?
It's never occurred to me.
But
that's part of the problem,
all the designs, all the design factories and everything, they use crash dummies, which are male crash dummies.
Absolutely.
They are tall, they are big, and they don't have boobs.
Absolutely.
Or pregnant tummies.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
So this is my issue.
Crash dummies are male. I think they are beginning to bring in smaller female ones, but most of them are male.
Yeah, it's not been the norm.
Right.
There you go.
Well, I'm all for female crash dummies. Want to be a crash test dummy?
Yeah.
And fine. Lovely. Just on the tax cuts things we talked about, loads of people have been in touch on this one. Stephen from Leicestershire says the Tories have failed to fulfil their previous promises. Why should we believe any further promises about tax cuts post-election? I guess the issue with that would be it would have to be in the manifesto, and therefore it's very difficult to break.
It is.
Well, it's not impossible.
Well, that's been done before.
Well, it has, but it would be up for the high jump.
It has, but I think you touched on quite an important point, which is on the economy, on tax, on the small boats. It's not that... I think people have just tuned the Conservatives out now, because it's been...
Well, Betty from Highcliffe says,
another.
why do chancellors believe that a tax cut here or there would really make a difference to the outcome of an election? The electorate are fed up with the fragmented Tories, but God help us if Labour get in.
Oh, that's a cheery...
Well, don't you think that's how a lot of people might be...
It's going to be a really negative election campaign, that's for sure, because neither of them have got a positive story to tell, even on the Labour side.
And a very low voter turnout, I suspect, as well.
There is going to be a lot of people who just won't know where to put the X, I think. Look, thank you both. We'll see you a little bit later on. In the meantime, let's check on that very windy weather with Craig.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to today, it's turning very stormy. We have Storm Isha moving across the country as we go through the course of the next 24 hours. Initially, this morning across parts of East Anglia, South East England, we'll get off to a fairly dry, bright but chilly start. Elsewhere, we're seeing increasing cloud and these outbreaks of rain moving in. The rain will be heaviest and most persistent across parts of Scotland, northwest England and eventually into Wales too. And for many western parts, the wind's really increasing as the afternoon goes on. Technically, a very mild day for the time of year, but factor in the wind and rain, it's not going to feel anywhere near as mild as these temperatures suggest. Into the nighttime period, the wind and rain stretches right across the UK. Some very strong winds, especially across more northern and western parts, could see gusts reaching 70 to 80 miles an hour along some coastlines. So enough for some disruption as we start Monday morning. It does technically start off on a fairly mild note for the time of year, but do allow some extra time for some journeys because there could be, as I said, had some disruption courtesy of Storm Isha. The winds will start to decrease as we go through a Monday morning, and really we'll see a day of sunny spells and scattered showers. Showers most frequent across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, but almost anyone will see the odd shower as the day goes on. Temperatures generally ranging between high single figures in the north, potentially double figures in the south.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Morning to you. It's 7 o'clock on Sunday, the 21st of January. Today, it's another day of another weather warning, as the Met Office is warning Storm Isha could bring heavy winds and heavy rain across the country.
And Craig Snell will keep us updated with your particular weather forecast.
Good morning. Storm Isha will bring plenty of wind and rain today across the country. Warnings are in force. Find out all the weather details in a little bit.
The government's teasing the prospect of tax cuts in the spring budget as Jeremy Hunt compares himself to the tax-slashing former Chancellor Nigel Lawson.
And 3 days out from the New Hampshire primary, Donald Trump, Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis are making their final pitches for the Republican Party primaries.
Got all your sport this morning, of course. Aidan's got the details.
Yes, indeed. Cam Norrie has stormed into the quarter-finals down at the Australian Open. We'll be reflecting on that. And the new Manchester United investor, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, is on manoeuvres. He's nicked a key man from Manchester City. We'll have more on that too, just a short time from now.
Lovely, Aidan. Thank you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Fed up of the weather. Look, we've been saying that for a long time now.
I know, but it just feels it goes on and on and on.
It's never ending, is it?
About that.
No, well,
And why I'm sitting here so many times and Jesus, it's just one after another. But that was on the kind of climate change, so we can go into it if you wish.
Oh, well, we will. As you can hear, Jim Dale is here because the Met Office has issued an upgraded amber wind warning for large parts of the UK.
Yeah, it's all about this storm Isha. Where has she come from? Where is she going, and how bad's it going to be?
Yeah, it seems like buses, you wait a long time for things to happen and then you get 10 in a row. And we seem to have been there. I seem to have been in this place and others very often, which is a tale in itself, to be honest with you. Where's it coming from? It's the jet stream, the upper air winds in the Atlantic. So we've We've lost the Arctic winds of a week ago, not even a week ago, a few days ago, and being replaced by what we had before then. And yeah, the train carries on, and that's essentially what we've got, a conveyor belt of storms coming in. This is the latest. And she, ruling goddess, by the way, that's the Isha. That's the.
I wondered who Isha was.
It's a Hindu name. I've got to look these things up to see why they come up with these names. And you know, if you look at the list of storms, there's some weirdy ones in there, and this is perhaps one of them. You think, whoa, who's made that one up? So it's between three Met Offices: the British Met Office, the Dutch, and the Irish. And this was the. Whoever chose it, anyway, it's in there, and that's what it is. So she's going to rule us for the next 24 hours. It doesn't properly get going until later today, and it's in the west to begin with, and the north and the west particularly. That's where the 80, 90 mile an hour winds are going to be. These are the gusts. These are damaging gusts. That won't be everywhere. Most places by the end of today and into tonight and tomorrow morning, even into the London area, 50, 60 miles an hour. So potential trees down, structural damage, tiles off roof, that type of thing. And with that comes the rain. Yeah, we're back to that one again.
You can feel already, can't you? That,
yeah.
I mean, we're seeing pictures at the moment of what it would be like probably in some coastal areas.
Yeah.
You know, waves absolutely crashing up against the side. But the rest of us, we're all going to feel it, because even driving down this morning in the south, you could feel the temperature slightly rising. It wasn't as cold as it was yesterday, but definitely buffeting winds beginning to build up.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. You can often feel, you know, in my life, I kind of, as a meteorologist, you think, oh, you just look at data and, you know, you spew things out from maps. But actually, I actually feel the same as you. If you're good at this, you can actually feel the changes in the air. That's one of the things. You ask anybody who's, say farmers, they're sort of secondary meteorologists, if you like. I think they're very good at sort of...
Well, do you remember everybody used to have a barometer in the office?
Yeah, of course they did. I've still got one.
You'd stick it and see something change.
I'll tell you what the issue with this, and you said, you know, the north and the west are going to be particularly badly hit by Isha. The problem with that is, it's the fact it's something else. It's yet another thing. And for some areas of this country, it has just been one bombardment after another with no recovery time.
You're quite right. And we were saying just off air, we were saying how many times I've been sitting in this seat and going, you know, the weather stories that have come in this last 2 years, particularly whether we're talking extreme heat or even extreme cold, but various storms particularly. Look, what it says on the can of climate change, what climatologists have said, is that winters would be more stormy, wetter, windier, and that summers would be more likely to be extreme heat. And you know what? That is being delivered as we speak today.
You really feel that as a meteorologist?
Yeah, I do.
We are seeing climate change here.
Look, you can't say every storm that comes along would not have happened without climate. They would have happened. What happens is that you get more intense storms, so more rainfall, more precipitation, more snow necessarily, higher velocity winds, and potentially, although that's yet to be sort of calculated, more of them. Though this is Storm 9, named storms, and we could have dropped a couple more in between that didn't get named by the three Met Offices that I've mentioned, but got named by France or Denmark. So it's a trail. This is exactly what it says on the can. I don't walk away from that. This is exactly where we are. And if you don't want to, you know, isolate Britain, you know, on its own and say, you know, it's just happening to us, well, it's not, because things are going along around the world that make that obvious to people like me. That you look at the southern hemisphere at the moment and you look at temperature profiles, and they're very similar to the very high extreme temperatures that we got in the northern hemisphere. And guess what? 2024 is unveiling itself. We're heading towards spring. I guess we're going to be probably revisiting the sort of stuff that we saw in 2023.
Right.
What's that? Hot weather?
Both hot, both stormy, the lot. To be honest with you, Liz, this is the pan of milk on the stove that we've turned the heat up, and it's bubbling and frothing over. That's exactly the way to see this. That's where we are with this. I don't mince my words as far as this is concerned. You probably know that already. You know, I'm very defensive in terms of climate change deniers, etc. It is going on, and we just need to watch it. But everybody today, particularly later today, watch your step, do the right thing, take the warnings as they're meant to be.
Yeah. OK. Jim, as always, good to see you. We'll catch up a little bit later on.
OK, thank you.
Oh, thank you for getting in touch.
Yes, lots.
Danny's been in touch saying, loving your hair this morning. So David Bowie, 1976-ish, man who fell to earth. He's talking about you then, isn't he?
No, he's not. He's talking because I've just been Googling it, actually. And I think he's talking about you.
Oh.
So you
First
look like...
time I've ever been told I look like David Bowie.
Because you've got almost like a bit of a melon streak at the front.
Oh, I see. Oh, right.
Do you know what I mean? So,
Oh,
so you
weird.
look like... Well, David Bowie was a bit
no,
metrosexual,
well, I was going to
wasn't
say,
he?
careful what you say, yeah.
So in his look and his style.
Morning, Sandra and Alan. They say we're watching you from Hoot Bay or Hout Bay in Cape Town. We've watched since the launch of GB News. I'm glad you're still watching. That's
And
great.
Emily and Keith are in Toulouse, listening to us on the radio as we get ready to support Bath Rugby in the European Cup.
Now,
Help us to cheer on Bath or Bath.
Well, yeah, Bath or Bath. This is really interesting. We were looking
here we
at
go.
those two vessels. They were...
Minesweepers.
Minesweepers, yeah. One crashing into the other. I thought they were clearly trying to do a sort of sideways parking so they could park alongside
I don't know if they
each
do
other.
parallel parking in the Navy. I don't know. Maybe.
Well, they need to learn if they don't. But John's been in touch with an interesting point. He said, when a moving vessel underway strikes a vessel which is safely moored alongside, not underway, this is an allision and not a collision. A collision occurs when two moving vessels, both underway, come into contact.
Well, there you go.
Isn't that interesting?
It is interesting.
I love things like that.
Also on corrections, with you moaning about the car and your headrest not being right.
Yeah.
It's not a headrest, says Mick, it's a head restraint.
Yeah, no, I do get that.
But also Richard says, what about short men? They get on with it. So there you go. Yes, but so short men don't have breasts.
Yeah, we were talking about cars and things in cars not being designed for women, particularly seatbelts, yeah.
It might be a breast issue, Richard.
It's a lot of different issues as well, but it's a well-known fact that cars have always been designed for men.
Had you ever thought about that, Jim? About this, the idea that women aren't comfortable in cars and with car seats and seat belts, and because it hadn't occurred to me and it hadn't occurred to Tom
There's been
Slater.
a book written about it.
Had you ever thought about it?
To be honest with you, my wife drives in the UK. She's Thai British and she drives in Bangkok. And
So she's quite small, is she?
Yes, she's small. But if you ever drive in Bangkok, it's quite fearsome. In other words, it's really, really scary stuff. And she does it extremely well. It's like negotiating things that you shouldn't be negotiating, people coming left, right and centre. So in this country, it's a lot easier. But I get that. There's probably a little bit of genes in there somewhere in terms of where we came from.
Jim, you've said the right thing. You will get your Sunday dinner today.
Thank you.
Otherwise, you could have been in a whole lot of hot water.
There have been books written about it.
Oh, right.
And there's a famous one, I'm trying to find it, but crash test dummies, for instance, are based on the average male, and that's just one example of design that forgets about women and puts lives at risk. This is something we'll have to go into more.
Oh, I can see a campaign starting on this one. You might want to campaign about tax cuts, though. And if you do, then it looks like you might be getting listened to. The Chancellor is teasing potential tax cuts in the spring budget to relieve pressure on families.
Yeah, ahead of the budget in March, he said the government's plan of prioritising tax relief is working and they will stick to it.
Well, the Tories, as we know, well behind in the opinion polls. So could this be the vote-winning budget in March that they need ahead of the general election, whenever that might be?
Well, joining us now to have a look at this is political commentator Lettice Bromowski. Good morning, Lettice. I wonder what you think. Does it seem like a bit of a cynical, last-minute ditch attempt to persuade us voters, whenever this election happens, to vote Tory?
I mean, absolutely. Of course, that this is what that is. This is a sort of political ploy. And the reality is, I think the public is just too clever to fall for it this time. We had the tax cut in the autumn budget where we got 2% on our national insurance. And the reality is that actually did nothing to put more voters in the Conservative camp. We're now even closer to that next general election. And I just can't really see this changing anything for the Tories.
Yes, but there is an argument to say, and he uses it himself, and the example of Nigel Lawson with his big tax slashing policies. is that, yeah, it feels nice in our pocket, but what it actually does is it boosts and bolsters the economy, and we could finally start seeing some proper growth, which is what everybody across all the parties agree we need to be having.
Yes, but even in that statement just there, we're talking long term here. And the one thing the Conservatives don't have anymore is time. There is no more long term in this. They would need to be implementing those tax cuts sort of immediately, not in the March budget, but we need to see them now for them to be even potentially seen by the time it comes to the next general election. So although they're giving us all these promises of what might happen and what could happen, we're not necessarily going to feel it by the time the general election comes around. Also, he's only saying what he would like to do, which is cut taxes, but he's not giving us any more information around what those taxes will be, how much they'll be, you know, who's going to be affected. There's so many details here that we are missing.
Yes, and it also makes you wonder if the Tories are going to go very big on this and they're going to tell us how wonderful these tax cuts are going to be, what Labour's response would be. What do you think?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as we know, we've got the highest tax burden at the moment. And at the end of the day, there is sort of no money left. There was always that iconic moment when Labour left and they wrote a note saying, you know, there's no money left. Right now, we do have the highest tax burden. We've got so much debt that we have to repay that essentially there is the fear amongst Labour at the moment that if they go around cutting all these taxes, there will just be a higher debt at the end of it. That realistically, looking as we head towards the general election, is going to become Labour's problem the closer that we get.
OK, Lettice, thanks very much indeed. I just wanted, because I know, Jim, you are a commentator as well as a forecaster. Yeah. I just wanted to throw this one at you, because Lettice brought it up there, and a lot of people are saying, you know, if there are tax cuts, there isn't time for us to see an impact. My instinct would be that you would say, we will bring in these tax cuts if we win the next election. So it's an incentive to vote.
Dangling the carrot.
Well, exactly, rather than saying, let's bring it in now and see what happens. Because, as I say, we're not going to see that impact. I would say, if you do that in March and have an election in May and say, well, we're going to bring them in straight after the election.
Is that going to... I'll use the word trust, because I think what's gone on, particularly in this last year or two, is that trust has been lost. And to gain trust back needs more than a little carrot dangling in front of your face.
It'd be a big carrot, though.
It needs to be a very big carrot, you know, and some meat attached to it as well. So I don't know. You know what? I will say something about this, and it comes into my territory, which is the Blue Wall territory. Labour are heading the Blue Wall, which is basically southern England mostly, but certainly rural areas. And where the Tories have lost is the environment and climate change in terms of what they're doing. They're kind of break, if you like, on that. And that's showing up quite nicely in terms of... and I say quite nicely, quite horribly in terms of rivers and sewage and all of this. And when you think about it, people who go surfing, swimming, boaters, fishermen, those are the sort of people maybe in these rural areas that used to vote Tory and now looking at it and they're thinking, what is this? This is just diluted protection and safety measures roughly from about 10, 12 years ago. So I suppose Brexit comes into it to a certain degree. We've gone down.
But then it's all listed in the Sunday Times, the Sunday Times and the Times yesterday. So Keir Starmer's big plan, which is the green growth plan, looks like it's gone.
I don't think until we get there, we're never going to know, are we? That's the point.
It looks like it will be.
I think you have to just like dangling the carrot. Maybe it's a huge carrot as far as the green revolution is concerned. That to me is job building. That's the economy going forward. We do not want to be last out of the gates, and we're already behind with that. We need to. Just like Tata Steel, if you like, you know, the old-fashioned ways of doing things. You go back to the coal mines, same sort of thing. You need that revolution to move forward, to be leading in the world, not to be, you know, coming last. Or you see where I'm going with this?
Well, I do, but on that point, and because this is where I think things are slightly more grey than black and white. I mean, the Tata Steel thing, you can look at that and go, yes, this is a much cleaner way of doing it. But what it means is we're not producing virgin steel, which we need by the droves, so we're going to have to just import
But there's
it.
always going to be an evolutionary period rather than a revolutionary period. You can't get from here to here just by the flick of your fingers. There's always going to be, just like the coal mines, there's going to be something that is in between that might not necessarily be great, and I accept that the job losses are not going to be great. I don't think it's been handled particularly well. I think we should have Tata should have gone on to the green side of things, which they're doing. That's what they're suggesting they're doing.
Yeah.
But they should have got there faster. Some of the problems that it is about speed to a certain degree. It is about willingness. It is about that approach and not putting on the brakes, which seems to be happening with this government more and more and more. So I just go back to that blue wall. I think there's many people in that blue wall are looking at it and thinking, environment is actually a big issue within the general election. When people look around and see things falling down around them and the rivers polluted and this, it's big to them. And that, it's often missed that environment and certainly climate change is not going to be there. Personally, climate change side of things, I think it should be right at the very top, because weather and climate, as we're going to find out tonight, and as we've seen in the last year, affects everything, the economy, everything downwards, your health, your well-being.
Oh, yeah, it affects people's whole lives.
Yeah.
You live near a river now. I mean, we've seen how many rivers have burst their banks in the last few months.
And will continue to do so.
And as Stephen said, with no clean-up time in between crises. And those are houses and people's lives and families. And it's been heartbreaking.
Yeah. Jim, thanks very much.
You're very welcome.
I do just want you to let us know. But I sort of wonder if you said the blue wall seats, where people may have a bit more money and they're more worried about the environment, but which should be attracting Labour support, and yet in the red wall seats, aren't people more just bothered about the money in their pockets because they're really struggling? Maybe that's where they're getting blue support. I think politics is so messed up at the minute with all this, so confusing. But let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Let's have a look now at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom this morning. An investigation is looking into how 2 British warships collided at a port in Bahrain. Footage on social media shows HMS Chiddingfold reversing into HMS Bangor. The 2 minesweepers are part of the UK's long-standing commitment to protect merchant shipping in the region.
Mail deliveries on Saturdays could be scrapped in an effort to reform the postal service. Ofcom is looking into how Royal Mail can, this is how they put it, evolve to meet changing customer needs. Surely doesn't mean fewer deliveries. It posted losses of £390 million for the first half of this financial year. Ofcom's going to outline the options on Wednesday, but says basically the government has to make the choice.
Mouthwash, tea bags and sausages are among the supermarket staples that have been downsized thanks to so-called shrinkflation. In other words, you're paying more but getting less. The consumer watchdog Which says shoppers are often paying much more for less and manufacturers are trying to just cut costs. They found, for instance, Listerine mouthwash shrank by 100 millilitres despite its price in Tesco going up by 52 pence. That's 21% more for 17% less.
It's very frustrating.
Now, the reason we were talking about an allusion rather than a collision, rather than a collision, is because John put us right, but apparently that's the actual term that should be used when a moving vessel strikes a vessel which is safely moored already. It's an allision and not a collision.
Does that apply to cars as well?
I would imagine so, yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
There you go, you live and learn.
Brilliant.
Let's see what the weather's going to do for you. After talking to Jim, let's see what the forecast is where you are today. Here's Craig.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to today, it's turning very stormy. We have Storm Isha moving across the country as we go through the course of the next 24 hours. Initially, this morning, across parts of East Anglia, South East England, we'll get off to a fairly dry, bright but chilly start. Elsewhere, we're seeing increasing cloud and these outbreaks of rain moving in. The rain will be heaviest and most persistent across parts of Scotland, northwest England, and eventually into Wales too. And for many western parts, the wind's really increasing as the afternoon goes on. Technically, a very mild day for the time of year, but factor in the wind and rain, it's not going to feel anywhere near as mild as these temperatures suggest. Into the nighttime period, the wind and rain stretches right across the UK. Some very strong winds, especially across more northern and western parts. Could see gusts reaching 70 to 80 miles an hour along some coastlines. So enough for some disruption as we start Monday morning. Does technically start off on a fairly mild note for the time of year, but do allow some extra time for some journeys because there could be, as I said, some disruption courtesy of Storm Isha. The winds will start to decrease as we go through a Monday morning, and really we'll see a day of sunny spells and scattered showers. Showers most frequent across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, but almost anyone will see the odd shower as the day goes on. Temperatures generally ranging between high single figures in the north, potentially double figures in the south.
Lovely stuff, Craig. Thank you very much indeed. I say lovely stuff.
It's not.
It's not lovely stuff, but you know.
Do stick with us, though. Do stick with us. We've got lots more to come, including that Alec Baldwin, the actor, indicted over that fatal gunshot on the set of the film. Rust, it was called, wasn't it? That's come back to bite him again, apparently. Yeah. Plus, we'll be asking, is a new generation of tennis stars emerging at the Australian Open? This is Breakfast on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Oh, we've got a treat for you this morning. We've got the sports with Aidan and the showbiz with Stephanie Tedgy. Good morning.
Morning, guys.
Morning.
Let's have a look, shall we, because we teased it just before. Alec Baldwin and the Rust shooting, which is absolutely tragic.
Yeah, Stephen, he thought he had put it to bed, actually, because last year, just before he was about to go on trial, 2 weeks before, they dropped the case, because the gun in question had been tampered with during forensic testing. But they got rid of that old prosecution team. They've got a new one now who are just refusing to let the case go. So they got the gun reconstructed, and through all the testing, they said someone must have pulled the trigger. So Alec Baldwin has always denied that he pulled the trigger, but that's how they've managed to bring this case back to court again. He got his lawyers...
Remind us what happened, actually.
Yes.
It was on the filming of this movie, Rust.
Yeah.
And the woman who sadly died as a result of that gunshot was his... I think she was...
She was a cinematographer, Helena Hutchins, a mother of two, and he had this gun, which he says he didn't know had any ammunition, live ammunition in it, and he said when he pulled it, he didn't think it was going to go off, and unfortunately, she tragically died on the spot. Her family have been left devastated by it. He denies it, as I've said, but he's now hired this top celebrity lawyer, Alex Spiro, who's never lost a case. He's the one that all the celebrities go to, and from the statement that he released last week, he said, "We are looking forward to our day in court."
What I don't understand with all of this, and obviously the family are devastated, understandably so.
Yeah.
And there are questions to be asked as to
there is.
why there was a live round in a prop gun.
Because that should never be the case.
Never, ever happen. However, I don't understand how people would necessarily say it was Alec Baldwin's fault. He thought it was a prop gun.
Yeah, I suppose the argument might be that he was being reckless.
Yes, well, that's it. So they've got two theories now that they could get him on. They're saying either he was negligent with a firearm or that he had a total disregard for other people's safety. So he might not be guilty of murder as such.
Actor, on a movie set, you wouldn't dream, would you, that it would have a live round in it?
No, you wouldn't. I was thinking that when you mentioned that a few moments ago, actually, Steph.
Yeah, but I haven't held a gun before, but I'm sure you could feel if you're actually, as an actor, if you've had a prop gun before, which he's probably had in training, and carrying a real-life gun which has got bullets in it, there must be a different feeling in there.
There's a weight differential between blanks and proper live ammo. But
I mean, I feel like you, that the family are obviously devastated. And it was a terrible tragedy. But you wouldn't for a minute think he did it in any way deliberately.
Well, that's why he's not being charged for murder, and he's actually charged for involuntary manslaughter. If he does,
in that they'd have to prove some sort of negligence.
That he knew that he was pulling the trigger, because that's what they've got on him.
You say bullets, I mean, a real gun. I mean, surely on a set you just need a fake gun, don't you?
I would.
Well, this is why a lot of questioning is happening. Well, if he is found guilty, he's looking at 18 months in prison. Whether that's actually going to happen,
I can't see it. I can't see how they could prove that he was being, unless there are reports or video or something of him being downright foolish and reckless. But even then, why would he think for a minute there was a bullet in it?
Well, they must have something to say we're going to go back to court with this again.
It's America, though, isn't it? It's stuff that's runs over there would never make it over here.
Well, that's why I don't really like going to America as much, is because of their people allowed to carry guns and it's legal over there. It's just pretty frightening.
Yeah. When you put it that way, too, mother of two, tragic story, isn't it?
Oh, it's terrible. But the only other thing is, has he been sorry enough? You know what I mean?
Contrition.
I've never seen him do an interview where he is obviously devastated by it or anything.
Oh, he has. He did. Yeah, he went on this world press tour afterwards just to
But actually, her husband at the time, there was a lot of contact between the two.
There was, and he paid them off. I think he paid them almost, God knows, over like $200,000 as a kind of sign of compensation. But obviously that doesn't add up to a life, and the family still want justice about this case. But you know what? The damage is already done with him, because it's like he says he's finding it hard to get a job in Hollywood. And they finished filming the film, which I think is distasteful. Just shelve the whole project.
I would have shelved it. I would have shelved it.
Gosh.
Aidan, let's
Yes.
have a look at what's going on with Manchester United and their new chief executive, because wasn't he something to do with Man City?
He was indeed. So Sir James Ratcliffe has bought into the club a 25% stake worth £1.3 billion. You don't get that kind of wealth unless you're a canny operator, and we're just beginning to see Sir Jim on manoeuvres now. So if you remember when Roman Abramovich bought Chelsea back in 2003, yes, they brought in lots of players on the pitch. He also made one key appointment off the pitch, Peter Kenyon, the Man United CEO, who then went to sign players. 20 years later, 21 years later now, time flies, doesn't it? Man United are looking to do the same thing. So they brought in the chief operating officer of Manchester City, who has been a key protagonist of their success over the last 10 years. And this is a key indicator of how Sir Jim works, because 2.5 years ago he revealed that he met up with Manchester City's owner. This is long before he bought Man United. And to discuss petrochemicals and investment in the chemicals market. He then revealed later on, he said, we didn't discuss chemicals until 2.5 hours in the meeting. Mr Mubarak was telling me how he ran Manchester City, all the key people involved, all the people who make it work. And then he goes and poaches the main man he heard about. This is a gentleman called Omar Barada. So listen, sometimes when you don't see these people on the pitch, on the field of play, sometimes their influence is overblown, sometimes it's understated, but it's an appointment to take control of the football side, make better signings. They wasted so much money, so much money in the last 10 years.
Yeah, gosh, it's been hard being a Man United fan this season.
And City have spent money, but they've signed good players, and they want this person to come in and make a difference for them. He hasn't got far to travel. He probably doesn't have to move house.
Do you think the fans will be happy with this?
Well, I don't know, because I think that not enough people will know about him. So he won't prove himself until he's in the job. But these are such vast organisations now, particularly Manchester United, but they want to take the emphasis away from what they do commercially. We know that Man United don't have to win titles anymore to make money. It's that big a club. They're much more successful commercially than Manchester City, even, for most of the last few years anyway. Just being Man United, that's enough. So the fans say, well, where's the incentive for us to actually win things and do what we do, which is win trophies? This man has come in to try and help them bridge that gap, and we'll see how he does.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
I hate to say it, but we appear to be out of time.
But you're coming back, aren't you?
You are coming
Yeah.
back, so we'll catch up a little bit more later on.
OK, well, do stick with us, because still to come, the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, is pushing in a very interesting way for freedom of movement with Europe for young people. You're watching Breakfast on GB News.
So much for
Stephen
Brexit.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
It's 7:38. Good morning to you. Should we have a look at the front pages this morning? Let's start with the Sunday Express. It says HS2 could be back on track. But that is because the West Midlands Mayor, Andy Street, and the Greater Manchester Mayor, Andy Burnham, are teaming up with each other and apparently with private enterprise to fund it.
Very interesting.
That's the plan.
In the Telegraph, the government's cracking down on activists in the civil service. Diversity networks will be reviewed in an efficiency drive.
A third of children are in danger as they're not fully vaccinated against measles. That's in the Sunday Times this morning.
And video footage has emerged of post office chiefs enjoying a lavish company bash while they were fighting wrongly jailed sub-postmasters in court. The Mirror says the bosses, including Paula Venables, were filmed singing along to their guest star, Pixie Lott.
And the Sunday People says Prince Harry and Meghan have sent a message of support to the King and Princess of Wales over their health scares.
Though, as we pointed out, other papers say exactly the opposite.
In terms of the post office thing and the fact they had a party, I know that seems like it's a great headline, a great story. I don't really know if it's that relevant.
I don't know. If I'd been a jailed sub-postmaster, I'd be flipping furious about it.
But these corporate events happen. And the editor, it's while they were the court cases have been going on for years. So you wouldn't therefore imagine within that 10, 15 longer period that there was no corporate events. Do you know what I mean? I'm just trying to be realistic about it.
I can't be. I feel so angry about that.
I think it comes across as really distasteful, and it's not a good headline, but.
Do you know Paula Venables? Different numbers pop up in different ways in the newspapers, but apparently her last year of earnings, she got a 400 grand bonus. 400 grand in 1 year. That's a bonus.
Well, nice work if you can get it. She was also up for running to be Bishop of London in 2019 or something like that. Anyway, let's have a look at the papers there with author and broadcaster Nicky Hodgson and the editor of Spiked, Tom Slater. Good morning to you both. Tom, this is in the Observer this morning. In 2016, after Brexit, there was a petition launched, wasn't there, for London to be declared an independent city-state so it could stay in the EU. Well, Sadiq Khan didn't try to do that. But he's doing the next best thing.
He is. He's sorry, excuse me. Pardon me. Yes, he is doing the next best thing. As you said, I remember that petition. I mean, anyone trying to suggest that Londoners are out of touch from the rest of the country, trying to declare independence from all the people who just voted the wrong way as far as they were concerned, was a pretty low point for that. But no, ahead of the mayoral elections in May, Sadiq Khan is making a play particularly to younger voters with this, suggesting that there should be some sort of agreement in place allowing young people from London and young people from the EU to be able to move back and forth more freely, to be able to work. It's not clear what this arrangement would look like. The idea has been floated before by other people that maybe 35 and under could be the cut-off. I don't know how you enforce...
So Brexit doesn't apply to them?
Apparently so, trying to opt out of Brexit.
I mean, it's nonsense, isn't it?
Also, I don't know how, under what power he could possibly strike up this deal, but I think it is very much a way to try to make the mayoral election about Brexit, given the fact that the Tory candidate, Susan Hall, is very pro-Brexit, wanting to make it along those kinds of lines. I don't know how much this is going to work. I mean, he's odds on to, be re-elected pretty comfortably anyway, but it seems like potentially the one thing that can always scupper things for Labour politicians in heavily Labour areas is, yes, the young people back you overwhelmingly, but will they actually show up? So maybe this kind of retail offer of, here's a clear-cut thing that I'm going to give you potentially, is how he's looking to win them over. But I just don't even see how this would work.
Could you do it through sort of a city twinning programme?
I thought that, yeah. I thought that, Anne.
I don't know.
Twin London with another city that agrees that there will be, under the twinning... I don't know, are there any laws governing twinnings? But under those sort of arrangements...
You'd have to twin it with all of Europe.
But he could do individual deals, couldn't he?
Exactly.
I don't know
how long would that take?
Well, yeah, exactly. But he could do it with some key cities. That would be a good way of doing it. I mean, I think about this all the time because I was a Remainer, but, this is rubbish, what he's doing. I think it's a load of rubbish. I don't think he can keep the promise for a start. Don't promise young people stuff you won't deliver because they never forget. Think about what happened with university fees and Nick Clegg back in the day, So don't start out with a lie. It's just a very, very silly way of doing it. I mean, but... I've got Irish heritage. I'm trying to get an Irish passport for my daughter at the minute.
Yes, I'm applying for mine too.
Just try and give her that freedom if she wants to work in Europe when the time comes. But, yeah, I don't see this working at all.
No, it's absolute crackers.
I don't know. I think it's interesting. It's interesting. I mean, for instance, my generation of children, my children's generation, would be really interested, really fascinated by this.
But in terms of this, then, so young people would be... It's got to be two-way, so those young people from Europe could come to London. Well, they're not going to stay in London, are they? If they're in the UK, they're going to go everywhere.
Come and work
so it's effectively free movement for any European under 35 to the UK.
The M25. It starts to get a little bit sinister. And it is one of those things where I know that Brexit, particularly for young people, is a bit of a totemic issue. But I do think this also reveals the sorts of Londoners that Sadiq Khan mainly appeals to, which is young people, yes, but what kind of young people? Students and so on. And also the kind of upper middle classes. The last election, even though he obviously was returned quite handily, it's among kind of working-class Londoners of all different backgrounds. People aren't as enthusiastic about them. Because I think your average cab driver in Tower Hamlets is not waking up every day furious about the Vote Leave campaign.
No.
It's not the case.
And again,
they're furious about you, Les.
Yeah.
Exactly. Those kinds of issues, definitely.
Yeah. OK, Nikki, measles, should we, in the Sunday Times? And we talked about this over the last couple of days as well, but the fact that these diseases, which we thought were sort of pretty much long gone or at least well covered, are making a resurgence.
Yes, but the reason they're making a resurgence is because people are not vaccinating their children. This terrifies me, this kind of story, especially with a little baby who actually, if she was to get measles right now, could be very, very poorly indeed, she's under 1. This is saying that actually about 25% of under 16s are not vaccinated. It requires 2 doses of the MMR vaccine to work, and there's just a big problem. And it's linked, obviously, to COVID, vaccine scepticism, but there are more issues than that, and there are issues that this report doesn't talk about. One of them is about certain communities that we don't reach and that we don't know how to talk to when it comes to immunising their children. There's this weird kind of, slightly bonkers growth in holistic healthcare, thinking that everything that's medical is bad for you, so therefore I won't, look after my child. But again, it's about responsibility towards others because, OK, maybe you don't worry about your 11-year-old getting measles, but if they pass it on to, a whole swathe of other children, then that's a big issue.
But actually you should do, because we've forgotten, haven't we, over the years, how horrible measles is.
It can kill people. It can kill children.
It is a killer, and it's also... It makes you very ill. And it's you're off school for months.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just so terrible. It's happening in particular There's been a problem in London for a long time. Now it's in Birmingham, now it's in the West Midlands. Of course, that's what happens. These things spread. But we've got to get better at telling parents that they have to do this. It's good for them.
How do we get this across to, I presume, sort of some ethnic minority groups?
Yeah.
What, is it just not in the culture? Or?
Well, I think it's more sometimes to do with the relationship between an ethnic minority and medical authorities. For example, the relationship that some black people have with how they've been treated by medicine and doctors in the past. So that kind of like grows in. And then there are just communities that are difficult to reach. You know, if there are people that don't speak good English, it's like, what are you doing? Get somebody who's trusted in that community to go and do the work. It's just so poor.
And I think be quite open about how you discuss these issues, because I think one thing that we really ran into with COVID was the fact that you had a tendency to try and shut down any of that discussion. Now, don't get me wrong, I've had my fair share of run-ins with those kind of anti-vax conspiracy theorists, they're lunatics. But at the same time, there was a lot of people in the middle who were just reading things they might see on the internet, seeing things they might see in the media, but also seeing a kind of response from officialdom, which was very, no, this is just the truth, be quiet, do it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that gets you any further either.
And you need open forums where people can ask any kind of question, however, worried they are that it might be stupid. Let people ask all the questions and then they'll feel informed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely, you can't just demand people do it and expect them to behave.
No, I think that's what people most resented about the COVID vaccine. OK, let's look, Tom, at Nicola Sturgeon and her WhatsApp messages.
Yes, or where are they? It's the question here. So this was a big scandal coming out of the COVID inquiry this week, which is Nicola Sturgeon, as well as her former deputy, John Swinney, have basically deleted all of their WhatsApps.
John's done it as well, hasn't
he? He actually had a mechanism in place, or his settings in place, that just automatically deleted them. And this is the thing about the SNP, not just under Nicola Sturgeon, but for some time now, which is that they have kind of ruled unchallenged for so long that these kinds of practices have been in place that only now they're really being held to account to, because of the fact Nicola Sturgeon is no longer in power, because of the fact that, their star is kind of falling in so many different respects. And it's a reminder as well that during the whole COVID story, Scotland were often kind of held up as being so much more effective, better, they were on the front foot. But not only were they, their COVID deaths were pretty much on a par with England, despite the fact that they had much more proactive measures in some areas.
It was higher, weren't they?
In certain places, definitely. And this is one of the things where I think that the kind of narrative that was set over the past couple of years is starting to come undone. And also just the idea of Nicola Sturgeon as a kind of morally unassailable figure.
But she was for a while, wasn't she?
But it's just so basic. And it's interesting, isn't it, that we've got that policy coming now into Parliament where they won't be allowed to delete messages. You will have to have stuff retained. I mean, the thing is, I know things like WhatsApp are encrypted, but there's always a record somewhere.
Yes.
So if you're ever doing a criminal investigation, then those companies can be asked to provide that anyway. So nothing's ever really deleted.
And also, if you've got a big WhatsApp group, someone is storing those messages.
Someone is screenshotting
As
away.
Matt Hancock found out.
Absolutely.
Although, don't you think, it's just that now we're looking back and we're asking them to reveal their WhatsApp messages, which at the time they believed were private.
Sure.
And I'm not sure. Now it would be different. You say to all politicians, whatever you say, at some point may be subject to analysis and scrutiny. But is it fair to look through her WhatsApp messages?
I mean, I do think it is fair because actually I think as a politician you should presume anything you say to somebody could go on the public record. Always presume that somebody else will be privy to your information. As a journalist, you have to work like that. Anyway, I mean, I just think it's...
And I do recognise that ministers have to have space in private to discuss things. You need to be able to float ideas. You need to be able to... It might not be the thing you're actually going to do, but you need to be able to have that sort of discussion. I think the big problem that came out with the pandemic is people using WhatsApp as a kind of official mode of communication. Less so in Scotland, but certainly more so in Westminster. This is where the chief medical advisor, the chief scientific officer, all of these people were actually communicating on a play-by-play basis, and that's a terrible way to do
and when your words
and therefore it does become public,
Exactly.
Was she critical? Was she critical of Boris Johnson over his WhatsApp messages not being fully available?
I'm trying to think if that would have lined up with her, being sort of out of office and keeping trim whilst that investigation was going on up there. I'm not entirely sure, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem right, does it? HMRC getting a bit of a kicking in The Guardian.
Well, I mean, I know it sounds like a boring story. Yeah, it's The Observer. It sounds a very boring story, but it's not, and I'll tell you why. So, HMRC, 6 years ago, introduced this new law called the Criminal Finances Act, and it was designed to stop employees of certain businesses being involved in tax evasion.
Right.
And it's very serious stuff. You know, we talk all the time about we've got, you know, where's the money coming from, etc. We know tax evasion is a real problem. Tax avoidance is a different thing, obviously not illegal. But nobody has been prosecuted under this act in 6 years.
Maybe nobody's done anything wrong.
Well, I don't think it's that simple, because with some other laws, there have been prosecutions. Margaret Hodge, the MP, has come out and said, you know, you're treating the law like a paper tiger. And the reason this gets me as well is think about that discussion we've had recently about getting people using Depop or eBay selling clothes to, you know, register with, getting HMRC to get the companies to watch them, like how much money they're making. Don't go after the little people, go after these people. This is genuine criminal activity. And
it's easier to go after the little people, isn't it?
Always.
That's what we found with the post office. HMRC doesn't use Horizon or anything else made by Fujitsu.
No, not that we know of. No. But I mean, it's not sending any message out that, you know, you have to do the right thing.
No. Well, if evasion is illegal.
Yes. Evasion is, yes.
Needs to be sorted out. Gender-neutral pets in the Sun on Sunday.
Gender-neutral pets?
Yes. What's that? Well, mind you, can I just say, I always used to get very annoyed that there was always, back in the day, I don't know if it's any different now, but anything for dogs was always for him, and anything for cats was always for her.
Yes.
And that always used, I wrote to a pet company once and complained about that.
Good Lord.
Because it was like, I have a cat and it is not a she. So what's all this about?
Yeah.
Or it might be a they, which is where
well,
there you go.
So,
he sort of is a they. Get my drift.
So this is a funny story. So Urban Paws, which is a talent agency based in Merseyside.
PAWS.
Yes, exactly. They are. They've bemused some pet owners because when people come forward and say, I've got this very attractive cat, I would like them to do some modelling or whatever, they've been presented with a form which asks what their gender identity is, so whether they're male, female,
gender identity,
or non-binary, which has left a lot of people... Apparently it was a part of a drive on the part of this talent agency. They wanted to look inclusive of gender non-conforming dogs and cats, I suppose, and so have got a little bit ahead of themselves, a little bit over the top, and are presenting these pet owners with these forms. But as Nikki was telling me, some pet owners seem to talk about their animals.
This is so fascinating. So I've discovered with my male sausage dog that when I take him out for a walk...
go in there.
Yeah, I know. Well, he's still got his bits because I want to breed him, so... you know, to me, he's very obviously male. Anyway, if I take him for a walk and I see somebody under 25 and they ask about it, they say, what are they called to him, always, which I find really fascinating. Look, you know, I'm very pro-gender diversity and all the stuff of it around humans and, you know, doing more research and learning about how gender works. But pets, really? And this is just ridiculous.
I know, it's totally ridiculous because they don't identify as anything.
Well, I should have to go home and ask my little doggy how she feels, how she self-identifies.
Yes.
So she'd have a view. She has a view on most things.
Has she been spayed?
She has, yes.
Well, there
she's
you
a
go.
rescue, so you
Yeah,
get
there
to
you go.
us.
No, I wonder what she... how very odd. Lovely, thank you both very much indeed. I must feel sorry for Timmy now. Sorry, Timmy. Let's see what the weather's going to do for you today. Here's Craig.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to today, it's turning very stormy. We have Storm Isha moving across the country as we go through the course of the next 24 hours. Initially, this morning, across parts of East Anglia, southeast England, we'll get off to a fairly dry, bright but chilly start. Elsewhere, we're seeing increasing cloud and these outbreaks of rain moving in. The rain will be heaviest and most persistent across parts of Scotland, northwest England, and eventually into Wales too. And for many western parts, the wind's really increasing as the afternoon goes on. Technically, a very mild day for the time of year, but factor in the wind and rain, it's not going to feel anywhere near as mild as these temperatures suggest. Into the nighttime period, the wind and rain stretches right across the UK. Some very strong winds, especially across more northern and western parts, could see gusts reaching 70 to 80 miles an hour along some coastlines. So enough for some disruption as we start Monday morning. It does technically start off on a fairly mild note for the time of year, but do allow some extra time for some journeys because there could be, as I said, some disruption courtesy of Storm Isha. The winds will start to decrease as we go through a Monday morning, and really we'll see a day of sunny spells and scattered showers. Showers most frequent across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, but almost anyone will see the odd shower as the day goes on. Temperatures generally ranging between high single figures in the north, potentially double figures in the south.
That that warm feeling inside. From boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It is, just coming up to 8 o'clock on Sunday, the 21st of January. Today, Storm Isha set to cause havoc as the Met Office issues warnings about really strong winds and heavy rains across the country.
And just in case you're wondering where it's particularly going to affect and if it's going to affect you, Craig Snell will keep us updated this morning with your weather forecast.
Good morning. Storm Isha will bring plenty of wind and rain today across the country. Warnings are in force. Find out all the weather details in a little bit.
The government's teasing the prospect of tax cuts in the spring budget as the Chancellor compares himself to the tax-cutting Chancellor Nigel Lawson.
And do you have a problem with nosy neighbours? One man in Derbyshire has hit out at neighbours who've criticised his recent renovations. So should nosy neighbours mind their own business?
They might have a point. Anyway, Aidan McGee's got your sport.
Yes, good morning. In the Premier League, Arsenal return to winning ways with a 5-star demolition of rivals Crystal Palace at the Emirates. And in the Australian Open tennis, Coco Gauff, Novak Djokovic and Cam Norrie storm through to the quarterfinals. More later.
Aidan, thank you. Good morning. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News. My goodness, you've been...
We have a lot of shorter ladies watching this morning.
It's just ladies who agree that it's a big problem that particularly cars are designed for men. And a lot of women drivers have real problems with seat belts and seats being too high and not being able to reach pedals and things like that. Actually, Nanny Glam, I like that, has got in touch saying the book Anne is thinking of is called Invisible Women. Yes, it is. It's called Invisible Women by Caroline Criado Pierres. It's fascinating because she just pulls together all these things that actually you don't realise were always designed by men, for men, and therefore are giving women still a very tough time.
Naveena's been in touch. She says, I'm 4'9". To put your seat forward enough to reach the pedals, my breasts are too close to the steering wheel. The seatbelt cuts across the neck. When you lift your foot off the accelerator to the brake, your knee hits the steering column.
Absolutely.
But she's got a Fiat Panda now, so the height of the seat is adjustable. So I can see over the steering wheel.
Yeah.
Which does clearly help.
Yeah, but Margaret says, I absolutely agree with you. All vehicles are designed for men. I used to drive coaches and I couldn't reach the pedals in certain vehicles.
Which is a worry. Mind you, Carol says, spare a thought for tall women. As a nearly 6-foot-tall woman with many female friends and family of the same height, we need cars and ambulances, which brought this up, that accommodate us with no exclusions.
Well, absolutely, but surely a car designed for a man would be all right for you if you're 6 foot tall.
You'd think so.
Yeah.
Go on.
No, I was going to read out Marilyn's email. Thanks, Marilyn. Totally with Anne and Nikki on this topic. I once had a police motorcyclist stop me as he thought I wasn't wearing my seatbelt properly. I had to show him why I had pulled it away from my body as I was in fear I'd decapitate myself if I crashed. I still worry about this now. I'd popped a small cushion near the top of the belt as it was really digging into my neck and ear, almost exactly as Anne mentioned. I know friends who have similar experiences. Why don't manufacturers take note?
Yeah, funny, I had no idea this was such a problem.
And then Della says...
Oh, Della, yes.
Stop making excuses for poor driving by women. Just get on with it.
Yeah.
Duh.
Also, Diane... unless it's meant to be Dylan. I don't know if it's meant to be Dylan. I don't know, but possibly Diane. Says dentist chairs are designed by men and are also very uncomfortable. Have you noticed? Yes, but I think... they're uncomfortable for everybody.
And I just won't get in one, so I don't know.
Oh, you're not a big fan of going to the dentist?
I go to the dentist.
Well,
and
who's a fan?
I really don't like it, yeah. Yeah, but some people, it doesn't bother them. Does it bother you?
Not for checks and things, but it's just when you're, in it for I had a cracked crown. It's horrible getting it all sorted out. Never mind paying the bill at the end.
Well, that is the really hurtful bit.
Yeah. It's 8 minutes past... No, it's not. It's 4 minutes past 8. Get it right. I'm all of a fuddle because the weather's terrible. And an upgraded amber wind warning has been issued for large parts of the UK. It's Storm Isha, winds of up to 80 miles an hour, possibly 90 actually this evening, with lots of disruptions to travel and utilities.
Yeah. Well, with us, I think, we're not going to Jeff Moody, are we?
Yes, we are.
We are. Who didn't tell me? Right, so we're going to Jeff Moody, who's our GB News South West of England reporter, who is there, in the dark. Lovely to almost see you. Is it getting windy down there yet?
It has been very windy overnight, very windy indeed, but not so bad at the moment. This is the 9th named storm of the season. Now, the season begins in September every year. You might wonder why the weather season, the meteorological season, begins in September, but it does. We've had 9 storms already, and I have to say, Anne, I've been stood out in every single one of them for GB News. Today is no exception, but what is an exception about this storm, which should kick in later on today, is that it's due to affect the whole country. Wherever you are in the UK, you should get a battering at some point throughout the day. Now, the storm will begin in the north, in Scotland, in Northern Ireland, and in parts of the north of Britain. That'll be beginning now. The wind is beginning to pick up here at the moment, but so far a little bit quiet. But by about 6 o'clock this evening, that's when most parts of the UK will be affected. But all the usual weather warnings are in place, as they always are, particularly this time to stay away from coastal paths, because there's a real risk of death, say the Met Office, a risk of death if you are too close to the coast, and with things battering away and things being blown. The real risk is that debris will be blown from the sea, from the beach, from near the beach, and you could be greatly affected by that. So stay very clear of the coastal roads, say the Met Office, and also from rural roads too, because a very real risk of trees coming down as well.
OK. Jeff, thanks very much.
Yeah, in other words, don't go out.
Don't go out. Don't do what Jeff's doing.
No.
That's stupid,
That's silly.
frankly. Let's talk to meteorologist Jim Dale, who's here in the studio. What's going on, Jim?
Good morning. Give Jeff a job there, can't I, really?
Oh, well, yes.
He did pretty well, to say the least. Yeah, what's going on is another storm, number 9, as Jeff just said, and the conveyor belt with the jet stream pulling all the winds in off the Atlantic and the rain with it. We've been there before. We had a respite, didn't we? We had a bit of snow and some really cold temperatures, but that's gone and into dust now, and we're now back with what we're seeing on the charts there, with the Atlantic roaring in for another time. So, look, Jeff's given some great warnings out there in terms of what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. Yeah, and you shouldn't be hanging off the nearest pier or that type of thing, because you do. I mean, to be serious about it for a second, I mean, I go running in the woods and walking in the woods near me, and I might do it this morning, but I won't be doing it this afternoon or this evening time for obvious reasons, because trees do fall. We see these accidents and incidents from time to time. It doesn't mean everything is that people put themselves in harm's way. Sometimes it's by accident. Sometimes things fly around, which will be the case. We've also got a rain involvement as well, so flooded ground. Even now, when I was walking next to the Thames yesterday, it's very high, and there's other.
Want to be on a canal boat in the Thames.
No, look, we haven't particularly recovered from the previous storms, from the previous deluges. So this is just going to add to it. Put in some snow melt in Scotland and the north, and hey presto, we're probably, arguably, in the next few days by the winds. The winds do ease down a little bit later tomorrow, but they come back again for Tuesday, Wednesday time. So we're almost back to square one. Whether that will be a name storm, we'll see. If it happens, it'll be Jocelyn.
But isn't that another woman's name?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, I thought they alternated between a male and a female name.
Well, in this case, they're not doing, because after that is Kathleen. Oh. So the women are being favoured because they've been done out as far as their cars are concerned, and their seatbelts and all the rest of it. So they're getting their own back on this one.
Can I just ask you? It's interesting that you talk about. I mean, there are weather warnings and there are danger to life warnings.
Yeah.
And it's not too nanny state-ish to emphasise those, because I've noticed that just recently on various news websites there are a lot of videos of people in North America where it's a very cold snap at the moment.
Yep.
They will still go out on frozen lakes and have to be rescued. Why do people do it? Is it
why are we so stupid?
Okay, okay, why are we so stupid? Because there are stupid people out there who do these things. And look, I can be open and say it. There are storm chasers that do that for a profession, for a living, if you like, and that's fine in one way. We like the camera shots and all of that sort of it, but there are other people who put themselves in harm's way because they ignore the warnings. They think that meteorologists just make it up for the sake of it. It's not going to happen to me. It's never happened to me before, so why should it happen to me this time? There's that kind of, we can sometimes take the weather for granted, and we shouldn't, because it is the largest impactor of our lives, bar nothing else. It guides what we wear, what we eat, what we might do. It'll affect the rugby matches this afternoon, for example, in terms of total points and who might win, who might lose. So it goes on and on and on. And that's why it's so important that the warnings that go out, not just about the weather per se and storms, but about climate change, that's not made up either, that people do take note and do the right things. So, Before we get off the subject in terms of this, I'm going to mention a film, if I may, because there's a film coming out. It's one of those films that go into climate change, and it's called The End We Start From. It's out yesterday, in actual fact. You can go to the cinemas and I'm going to make a beeline tomorrow if I can.
Is it a drama film?
It's a drama film. It's a British film. So good on the British filmmakers. And I think it's based in London, and you see on the clips a bus in mid-London somewhere up to its top windows with the floods. You know, these come out every so often, but this has got 4 stars apparently from The Guardian. Peter Bradley, who's the film critic there. So,
you're very into this.
That might turn off of quite a few of our viewers and listeners. It's big thumbs up from The Guardian.
Yeah, it might. But look, it's a film. If you want to be entertained and you want to sort of sit in a comfy seat while the winds are
Jodie Comer and Benedict Cumberbatch.
There we go. There you go. So,
so it's a big deal one.
4 stars. Might be worth watching. The Day After Tomorrow was the last one I watched. So to do with that.
Oh, you watch all the cheery stuff.
Yeah.
I've got to, haven't I? I've got to be a big critic on things like this.
Yeah, well, you will be. Jim, good to see you. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Like the look of that. Love a good movie.
Jodie Comer, she's very up and
She's
coming.
very up and coming, yeah. But Benedict Cumberbatch as well, so it's a pretty A-list thing.
Anyway, well, we shall see. I haven't been to the cinema in ages. Anyway, look, let's talk about taxes, which I do very much care about. And if there's a film about taxes, I can't see it.
Oh, please. Actually, funnily enough, in The Day After Tomorrow, or whatever it was, that apocalypse movie, the one thing they managed to burn in the library to keep themselves warm is all the books on tax law.
Oh.
Because they said nobody's going to miss those.
No, that's true. Anyway, look, the Chancellor's teased potential tax cuts in the spring budget to relieve pressure on families.
Yes, that's nice of him. Ahead of the budget in March, he said the government's plan of prioritising tax relief is working and they will stick to it.
Well, of course, the Tories are well behind in the opinion polls, so could this be the vote-winning budget in March that they need ahead of the general election?
What do you think? Well, joining us now to discuss this, Labour commentator James Mathewson. Are you convinced at all that this government has always said they will prioritise tax relief and that's just what they're doing and it's working?
Absolutely. I mean, they've spoken about tax non-stop, haven't they? It's nothing new. However, I think what we're seeing this time is, as I heard the news and heard about this, I thought, well, it's a desperate plea, isn't it, before the election? And then I turned to the next page in the Mail and realised that it is quite literally a desperate plea. I think from Jeremy Hunt, he's written in the Mail, you know, don't believe Starmer. You know, listen to us. Good times are coming, I think is exactly what he said. I mean, what a patronising line to take. Good times are coming.
Did he actually say good
times are on their way, I believe is what he said. And I mean, to say that after what this country's been through, you know, stick with us after, you know, over a decade of us, you know, running this economy into the ground, please just hang on, stick with us a bit longer. Good times are coming.
Well, what as opposed to what, though? Because, I mean... All right, there's a feel-good factor to this, but the argument would be that in the medium to long term, it will grow the economy, which is what we need in the footsteps of Nigel Lawson. Keir Starmer's big plan to grow the economy is the green growth agenda, which now it looks like is being scrapped altogether.
Well, I don't think scrapped. I think he's flexible on it. And I think the difference is, well, very flexible in the sense that you've got to be, because that's sensible economics. But we don't want somebody to say, my ideology is going to commit me to spending this amount of money no matter what. What we want is somebody who says, this is ideally where we're going to go, this is the direction, but it will depend on the economic forecast at the time.
Yeah, but the problem he's got is that he's pinned all his growth policies on that. So if it doesn't happen, how's Labour going to grow the economy?
Well, I think investment as a whole is their central focus. And I think that's, I mean, it's always been the kind of prime difference between, you know, kind of centre-left economics, centre-right economics, is that investment versus, you know, being a bit more austere. And for the Tories to be saying, oh, well, tax cuts is where it's going, it's far too little too late, you know? I mean, a lot of people will rightly be saying, well, why don't we try something different? We've had so many years of the Tories saying, well, trust us, you know, we're the financially and fiscally responsible party. Where's the evidence for that? We've seen no evidence.
What will the Labour response be then? If as indeed you were right, it literally is there in the headline, good times are coming, says Jeremy Hunt. But what will Keir Starmer say to that in the middle of an election fever.
I think he'll just go straight at it in the sense, and you know, a strategist, you know, like myself would be saying that's just, it offers it up on a plate, doesn't it? It's desperate. It's a desperate, please trust us, please hang in. I think Keir Starmer will say, too little, too late. You've had your chance. You've had more than enough time to try and resolve this and to sort it out, regardless of, you know, the world-changing events such as the pandemic and all the rest of it. You've had the time to reprioritise and to change your tact. You've not done it. Clear the way for a Labour government to try a different approach.
Yes, but to win votes over, what you need from a Labour government or from any party is to say, well, we will change it by doing X, Y, and Z. And all we get at the minute is anything that they're going to do is going to be funded by, you know, not claiming back tax on non-DOMs and taxing people going to a private school. That seems to be paying for everything at the minute.
I think there is a lot of money to be had there, and I think it's that looking at our current system and saying, how do we get the most bang for our buck, as government should do with our taxes? You know, where are the taxes currently where we're not having to put the pressure on normal working people and ask them for more? Where is the current tax being put where it shouldn't be put? And things like private schools, I mean, you know, why are they exempt from paying tax? It's ridiculous. When our own schools, teachers are having to bring in supplies themselves. In some cases, they're having to feed children.
But there's even with that, there's a basic question which hasn't been addressed, which is, it is going to see, if you do that, it's going to see more children in the state sector. But Labour says, well, they haven't addressed remotely how they would fund that.
I think we'll see education policy being fleshed out. We'll hope we'll see education policy being fleshed out, put it that way. I think at the moment, obviously, as we lead up to this general election kind of campaign, you know, they're wanting to lay out the fiscally responsible credibility. That's such an important thing for Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer, to be able to say, look, you can trust us financially, and then when it comes to that campaign, they can start making the pledges about how they're going to spend the money, because that's the big problem, remember, under Jeremy and under, obviously, the left leadership of the party, was that, you know, these responsibilities, they weren't trusted, so every pledge that was made, and there were far too many pledges that were made, had no credibility behind them.
But how do you have fiscal credibility if you don't have a growth plan?
I think the growth plan will be there, and I think it'll be fleshed out in a manifesto, and I think it's based on investment. And I think the green energy vision that we're seeing is largely, you know, ambitious and saying this is where we could go, and it's putting Labour in a position where they're ready for the future. But things like GB Energy, you know, I mean, I'm up in Edinburgh, I'm based in Edinburgh most of the time. People there are absolutely thrilled at the prospect of having, you know, a national energy company based in Scotland, because at the end of the day, you know, Scottish independence campaign came from such dissatisfaction with no investment from Westminster. Westminster said, well, you've got your devolution, there you go, leave it, you've had enough. You know, the Scottish government can look after it. Actually, it's the UK government saying, you know, every part of the UK matters and we're going to invest in it. So I think seeing more plans like that as we come to the general election campaign, I think will be popular with the public.
Well, we shall see. We shall see. James, really good to talk to you this morning.
Thank you very much
indeed.
I just wonder if anyone will believe politicians and what they promise in the next few months, or whether you'll vote instinctively and historically as you always have felt.
Don't know. I think it's time to listen. I'm finding this all fascinating already, because I just, you know, it's no point saying I've always voted Tory or I've always voted Labour. You need to listen to what's being offered and then make a decision.
But it's being promised, and it's whether you trust the promises.
Yeah, certainly is.
Anyway, let us know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.com.
Now, here's one for you. Have you got a bad back? Or, indeed, stiff neck, stiff shoulders?
Well, you wouldn't be alone. Apparently, Britain's facing a major health crisis fuelled by back and neck problems.
Well, experts are warning this is because of our increasing obesity and ageing population as well, and, oh, this is interesting, a rise in remote working.
It's not good for your back or your neck, isn't it? Sitting at home, at the kitchen table or whatever, in front of a laptop. Almost 1 million people even say they're too sick to work because of it.
OK, let's talk to pain treatment specialist Suk Pada, who joins us now. Really good to see you this morning, Suk. How do we even begin to tackle this then? Because I sort of think, is a lot of it just common sense that we just need to adjust our posture?
Good morning, Steve. Good morning, Ian. Yeah, really it is. And one of the things we advocate in clinic is to be more proactive. As you mentioned, there's nearly 1 million people who signed off long-term sick. There's a lot of, obviously, pressure accessing NHS services. there's a shortage of physiotherapists with the NHS as well. So I think the onus is really a lot on us to be able to do what we can to rehabilitate ourselves, have expert advice, and be able to sort a lot of these issues out ourselves. Because if you have early enough intervention, a lot of it can be sorted out without leading to long-term chronic issues.
We all know, though, don't we, that if you talk to any GP, they say it's one of the biggest problems they ever see is people coming in and complaining of back pain. And it seems to me there's very little, other than just doling out painkillers, which don't always solve the problem. What else can they do?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is, it really fundamentally comes down to movement. As you mentioned before, a lot of people are remote working at home now. They're either hunched up in bed on their laptops or, they're on the kitchen table, etc. Long periods of time sitting down, poor posture. So really, it's movement is key. And I always say, I have it in my desk as well. I'll have a little prompt every half hour, get up, move. Hydration is key, drinking lots of water. That'll make you go to the loo as well. Stretching, just simple stretches daily, exercising, strengthening the core muscles. And there's a lot of really good sort of YouTube videos out there which, provide these simple stretches and exercise that we can do. But I think we need to be more active as well.
If you have got a real issue, what is available for you, though, in terms of, I mean, what do they call it? Osteopathy? Is it? Oh, and chiropractic?
Yeah.
Stuff and all that sort of thing. Because I mean, I've never had it done, but it all sounds a bit gruesome. Does it actually all work?
Yeah, I mean, the options that you really have is obviously well-known as physiotherapy, your osteopathy and chiropractic as well. We provide holistic health, so we realign all the body, we combine acupuncture with it as well. And that is very, very effective in not only dealing with the pain, but getting the muscles more loosened, so increasing more movement in there as well. But, even prior to getting to that, and part of the rehabilitation is if you're having these therapies as well, it's in between, say, your sessions. So there's a lot of things you can do yourself as well. As I mentioned, stretching, going for walks more, Also, it's well known that a stressful life, causes tight neck muscles, etc. We spend too much time on our phones, sort of bending, hunching over on our phones. So there's things we've got to take a little bit of responsibility for our own health as well. And it's things that we can simply add into our lifestyle, which can make a lot of changes.
Yeah, indeed. Sue, good to see you.
Yeah, just talking about it made me realise that I was sort of beginning to do that.
We do, yeah, we slouch.
Yes, we slouch, and you need to be reminded. Yeah. I think every half-hour reminder is a good idea. Have you ever read David Mitchell, the comedian David Mitchell? His book is called Backstory, and he suffered from terrible back pain. I mean, really debilitating back pain that was getting him down, and he never thought he'd ever be able to do anything about it. And then somebody recommended that he make himself go for an hour's walk every single morning.
Right.
And it's been like a miracle cure.
Really?
So he's written a whole book about it.
A lot of weight loss.
Well, it did result in weight loss as well, but it's called Backstory. It's a brilliant book. And after taking up walking, his back pain improved so much that he just feels evangelical about it now and has written this book.
Because I do sort of think going for some of this... I've had issues with my frozen shoulders and things. I've had so much physiotherapy over the years, you wouldn't believe.
For a shoulder?
For frozen shoulders. So diabetics are more prone to it. I've frozen shoulders, I've had frozen hips, and all sorts of stuff. I've had what must total years of physiotherapy, and I've never found it to work at all.
Gosh.
And I don't know why. Just doesn't. A good massage can make a big difference, but the actual physio, I've never had any joy with it whatsoever. And I've also had one of them started doing acupuncture as well.
No good? You have to keep trying things, I think.
You do have to try it.
Certain things work for some people and they don't at all for others.
No, acupuncture didn't do anything for me. Just a bit uncomfortable. But maybe you've had much more success with it all.
Anyway, I do recommend David Mitchell's book.
I'd rather go for a walk and pop a tramadol.
Go for a walk and listen to his book while you're walking.
In the days when you could get tramadol. Can't really get it anymore. That was lovely stuff.
No.
Anyway, so we see you don't want to go for a walk today. Actually, really don't, because the weather's going to be terrible. Here's Craig.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to today, it's turning very stormy. We have Storm Isha moving across the country as we go through the course of the next 24 hours. Initially, this morning, across parts of East Anglia, southeast England, we'll get off to a fairly dry, bright but chilly start. Elsewhere, we're seeing increasing cloud and these outbreaks of rain moving in. The rain will be heaviest and most persistent across parts of Scotland, northwest England, and eventually into Wales too. And for many western parts, the winds really increasing as the afternoon goes on. Technically, a very mild day for the time of year, but factor in the wind and rain, it's not going to feel anywhere near as mild as these temperatures suggest. Into the nighttime period, the wind and rain stretches right across the UK. Some very strong winds, especially across more northern and western parts, could see gusts reaching 70 to 80 miles an hour along some coastlines. So enough for some disruption as we start Monday morning. It does technically start off on a fairly mild note for the time of year, but do allow some extra time for some journeys because there could be, as I said, some disruption courtesy of Storm Isha. The winds will start to decrease as we go through a Monday morning, and really we'll see a day of sunny spells and scattered showers. Showers most frequent across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, but almost anyone will see the odd shower as the day goes on. Temperatures generally ranging between high single figures in the north, potentially double figures in the south.
Oh, Craig, thank you.
Oh,
Sorry, I've just got an itchy ear.
Oh, there's nothing worse.
Do you ever get that, itchy ears?
I do in the ear that takes the earpiece.
Maybe that's what it is.
I swear, I've been wearing an earpiece always in my left ear for some reason for so many years. There's no way I'm not. I think I'm a bit deaf in that ear anyway now.
Probably are.
Yeah.
I tell you what, I thought because hearing aids now are like these.
Yeah.
So because they're like the speaker actually goes in your ear.
Yeah.
And the only thing that it does make me think is when I do need hearing aids, I won't mind it so much because these are very comfortable.
They are better and better and better now.
They are a lot better.
Aids, aren't they?
And they can Bluetooth to your phone and everything, so you can take the phone calls on them.
Yeah. But expensive if you have to buy them yourself.
Thousands, apparently. Anyway, that's a whole different issue. We're going to be talking sport and showbiz for you in just a couple of minutes, and possibly hearing aids. Don't go anywhere.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You'll never guess what we've been talking about.
Hair removal.
Yeah.
You don't want to know. This is what happens when you're surrounded by two gorgeous women.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Nice.
Thank you,
No.
Stephen. Aidan,
Yeah.
what have you got to say?
Aidan, I thought you were smooth. You've got to learn.
I've got my tweezers in my pocket.
And also, when you walk in, you get this lovely waft of whatever aftershave you're wearing.
Yeah.
There's a
nice one.
Oh, thanks for that. I won't say what it is, but
No.
but it's a signature.
A signature fragrance. Very nice. Before we chat to these two problem makers, let's talk about a man in Derbyshire who is anonymous. But he's hit back at his neighbours who've called his new house tasteless and a monstrosity.
Yeah, this man spent £1.7 million building his dream mansion. But angry locals say the house doesn't actually fit into their quaint village, which is called Weston-on-Trent.
Yes, it went from this...
That looks very...
to this.
Oh.
It looks quite nice.
Well, it's not that bad, is it? It's all one house, so I see. It was sort of vaguely historic, the original, wasn't it?
Yeah, but that's... I think that's quite
nice. But is it any right for the neighbours to have a say on that?
Should they get involved? Or should they keep their
nose
snout out?
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, let's talk to social behaviour and etiquette expert Liz Brewer. Good morning, Liz. What do you think?
Morning, Stephen. Well, they always say a man's home is his castle. I would have thought, in actual fact, as long as they got planning permission and that was all in order, then absolutely fine. I don't think it's a monstrosity. It looks as if it's actually been developed because there are about 7 or 8 cars there. So it looks as if it's been developed into a number of homes. It's quite interesting because I'm actually in Antigua, but just before I left, I was with somebody called David Boyle and his dad, Viscount Glasgow, and he has a castle up in Scotland where they had a bit of a problem. But anyway, he painted it, or arranged it to be painted, totally psychedelic. And you could say that people might object to that. However, it's now one of the highest draws of tourism in Scotland. Everybody wants to go and see this extraordinary looking castle. I have to admit before, it does look charming and maybe it fitted into the village. But, you know, we have progress and things have to go forward. And as I say, as long as it had planning permission and that was in order, I don't think the villagers can really complain.
The right time to complain is when planning permission has been put into the local council, and that's when you get your say. And I guess if you lose out, then you can't moan afterwards. I mean, it's not as if he's put up a monstrosity. The original house was obviously historic, but it may have been an absolute wreck inside. And he obviously had moved on and got the planning permission and gone ahead. I would, yeah.
Precisely. Yeah, Precisely, and as long as that's in order. But it does look as if it's been, I mean, there were about 9 cars there, so maybe it's been a project which has been developed. It's not much you can do, it's progress. And unfortunately, if it's gone ahead as far as the planning's concerned, there is nothing you can do about it.
Oh, I'll tell you what, I've just looked at your friend's castle, Liz, and if I lived anywhere near that, I would be complaining.
It is a bit gaudy, isn't it?
So there you go. But that's just my personal opinion. I'll show it. I'll spin it round so our viewers can
it really is
have a
very,
look.
very gaudy. It looks like something out of a theme park. It's a
bit
really.
Yeah, it's a bit hippie-ish for me.
Yeah.
It's
good to
fabulous.
see you.
What are you
Thank
talking
very
about?
much
It's
indeed.
different. It's different.
It's definitely different.
Yeah, but that's not enough of a defence, I don't think, is it? Can we get to see
Yes,
it?
can we get a shot? Bring us up on 6.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go. You get the idea.
You get the idea. It's really gaudy.
Blooming awful.
That's a sight for store
That
eyes.
thing. Oh, I can still hear the teacher in the background.
Yeah.
OK, as you can see, Stephanie Tetchy's here to take us through all the showbiz. Aidan McGee's got all the sport. Good morning.
Morning.
Aidan, can we start with Arsenal and Crystal Palace?
5-0. Arsenal beat Crystal Palace. They'd been criticised over Christmas. Are they losing their nerve? Are they beginning to crack under the pressure of having signed Declan Rice last summer for £105 million? And is this finally the season after 20 years where they're going to finally romp home and get that elusive Premier League title? Four defeats in 5 games, I think it was, prior to yesterday, but they hit back in style, 5-0 against Crystal Palace. It leaves Roy Hodgson under a little bit of pressure. Their supporters were complaining and protesting in the away end. Graham Potter, the former Chelsea manager, was in the stand as he said he's going to retire at the end of the season. He's 76 years old, as we know. But yeah, just 2 points behind the leaders now, Arsenal. Liverpool play later today. Manchester City looking ominous too. So we'll see how it plays out. I'm not going to make any predictions because they're nearly always wrong.
Yeah,
That's a very good reason not to make
Yes, it is exactly. But no, I just want to see an interesting race for the first time in a while. It doesn't look as predictable as it has looked at this time of the season, and that's what we want to enjoy. We want to see competition. We don't want to see the team that spends the most money winning it. Arsenal spent money, but as long as there are 2 or 3 options in there to make it interesting, that's all we want.
Let's cross over between football and showbiz and talk about Kyle Walker.
It's been the big story in the papers.
First of all, who is he? Because I need to...
Who is he?
He is probably the best right-back in the world. In fact, I put him up there as one of the greats. He's exceptionally fast. He played at my club, QPR. He's very quick.
Who does he play for now?
He plays for Manchester City now, but he was at QPR on loan. He was at Tottenham, and then he went to Man City, establishing international. He is an outstanding player.
It's been a lot of places on loan.
He has. You know what? It's been all over the newspapers this week because Carl's been a naughty boy.
Yeah.
He's married to his childhood sweet Annie called Annie. They've been together for over 12 years. They've got 3 children. But while they were on a break, he impregnated a reality TV star called Lauren Goodman. They had a child together, and now this week it's come out that he's fathered a second child with the reality TV star, which has caused his...
he and his wife actually split up?
No, they're still together. So this week she says, she put a statement out and she says that she's left him and she's not going back. And apparently...
Take him to the cleaners.
Yeah, and apparently she's pregnant with their 4th child at the moment.
No.
So, you know, Aidan, I was going to talk about these footballers who just can't seem to...
I feel partly responsible for this because I interviewed him in 2017 in Surrey at a shoot for a famous fast food restaurant. And we all knew he was going to Man City, and I told him I'd lived in Cheshire, and he asked me where was good to live. And I suggested a few places which he ended up in. And I wonder if I'd directly put him in this situation, so...
I don't...
Listen, sorry, go on. Our footballers all the same?
Yeah, does it do well for them on the pitch, knowing that they've got all this extra marital affairs going on?
Clubs don't like it anymore. They don't like that kind of paraphernalia that goes with them. It was kind of went with the territory years ago. But if you're choosing between... Alex Ferguson, when he was at Man United, he had spies all over the country, all over Europe. He had players going back to, say, I don't know, Portugal for the weekend. He had spies over there knowing... Roy Keane came into training once, having had one night out at a casino. Fergie comes up to him in the canteen and says, didn't know you like to bet. You know, he knew everything. And
so he kept a lid on this sort of
He kept a lid on it, and increasingly clubs don't like it, and they'd rather than remedy the problem on a day-to-day basis, they'd rather sign a player who's not into that kind of stuff. The stuff we're talking about with Kyle Walker doesn't affect his performance on the pitch. other stuff in terms of what other players get up to is much more serious. Things like gambling, boozing, all the rest of it, you don't see that as much anymore.
I'll tell you what is odd with this, and it's being claimed today, is that this Lauren Goodman...
Yeah, she's having a field day with the newspapers at the moment.
Well, isn't she just... But she apparently... was trying to console the wife.
Yes.
When he'd had an affair with somebody else.
Yeah.
Before she then got with him.
Well, this is the problem. It's these women who actually target these footballers, these married footballers as well. And now she's trying to be like, woe is me, like, we fell in love. But, like, you knew he was married. He's in the public eye. She's been selling stories to the newspapers this week. And I just feel sorry for the wife.
But some people, some cynical people will point out that having at least one baby by him, now two...
Yeah.
You've got a meal ticket for life.
Yeah, she's sorted. But for him now, it's just that his reputation is ruined, but people still celebrate him.
Well, is his reputation ruined?
No, not at all. I mean, a lot of people won't even know about it. You ask the average Man City fan or England fan when he lines up in the Euros this summer, do you know about Kyle Walker's extracurricular activities, as you might put it? Most of them won't know. But you have to understand the geography of Cheshire as well, as I do. It's very, very claustrophobic. Alderley Edge, places like that, they're less than a mile long, people know each other, things happen, you know, we'll know how it ends.
Well, I don't think you can blame Alderley Edge on Nuts for
no, it's got a good service station.
For all these affairs. Well, at least these ladies can console themselves by talking to the papers
and getting child support
and posing in their underwear, which is what they always seem to do.
Happening?
Yeah.
Well, no,
it must help. It must help.
It's going to happen.
Oh, I'm so distraught. Here's a picture of me in a bikini.
Here's me in the Maldives. Here's me in the Maldives.
Well, it's a mess, Kyle. You should have known better.
I know. No one's loyal anymore.
No, they're not.
I'm so sad, except for you.
If you perform for England this summer, it'll all will be forgiven, I'm sure.
Is she the one that's hired this apparently really difficult lawyer?
No, that's Paddy McGuinness's wife.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Paddy's
going to face a pit bull divorce lawyer, apparently. That's in the Sun on Sunday, this one.
Gosh.
Because obviously whatever's gone on between him
I
and...
can understand why most people in the limelight now don't want to get married anymore, because they just know if it ends up, all their money's going to go.
Well, get married for the right reasons. And,
Yeah, and stick...
And behave yourself.
Stick with it.
Exactly.
Anyway, look, thank you both.
Thanks, guys.
Nice to see
you. We better move on, because we've got the paper review heading your way in just a moment.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At 8:46, let's go through the papers this morning with Nikki Hodgson and Tom Slater. You two, good morning.
Morning.
Now, I'm sure there's been a film about this, Nikki. It's in The Observer this morning about zombie viruses from melting ice caps and things.
Yeah, so, well, it sounds a bit Jurassic Park, but stay with me. So basically what's happening is in the Arctic, there's permafrost. Permafrost is frost on top of soil that's been frozen below 0 degrees for thousands of years, and people are going up there, they're trying to kind of dig out minerals and oil from the earth, and they're disrupting these microbes that have been preserved for thousands of years and potentially are very dangerous to humans because we've never had any interaction with them.
Yeah, because they've been around since before we have.
Absolutely, so our bodies don't know what to do with them. And it isn't just a kind of like fantasy film stuff. They actually did an expedition in Siberia where they found some of these kinds of viruses. They tested them with what they call single-cell organisms, and they infected them so that although they don't know if they would necessarily cross to humans, there are other kinds, obviously, we don't know about that could. So...
How can they still be around, alive, functional?
Because they've literally been frozen for thousands of years, and obviously in permafrost there's no oxygen either, so, you know, they can't kind of reproduce. What is fascinating about this is it's not necessarily to do with sea ice in the Arctic melting. It is to do with people going up there and tapping it for oil.
Right.
So that's the issue, and
but that's not going to stop, is it?
No, of course it's not, and it's actually more important to pay attention to it. In fact, the expert here says you could put a yoghurt in permafrost and it might still be edible 50,000 years later. So that's how good it is at preserving things.
Ooh.
It's extra specially cold.
So basically, this is where the next pandemic could come from.
Oh, how would we fight that?
Happy news.
Honestly.
The woolly mammoth.
It's a very good plot for a movie.
It is,
Well, I
isn't
say
it?
it's been made.
I think it has been made, yeah.
Yeah, I can't think of the name of it, but it's quite a good, scary film, and now it's coming to life.
Contagion, is it?
Might be something like that.
No, Contagion was it was almost like COVID-19.
Yeah.
It was thought to come from the Chinese.
Oh, was
clinic,
that the Kate Winslet one?
The Kate Winslet one, yeah.
Oh no, I thought she was terrible in that.
I thought she was really good.
Oh no,
it was really good.
I was glad when she popped off.
Oh,
I thought
everybody
she was
nearly popped off in that one, though.
It's not really awful. I watched it during the pandemic, and I thought
you
was so
shouldn't have
bad
watched
in it.
that during the pandemic.
Did it give you nightmares?
It was number 1 on Netflix.
But didn't it even worse about stuff?
Yeah.
No.
I watch like Disney films.
A bit
of Taylor Swift, stuff like that.
A proper northerner. You're clearly not a proper northerner. What's this in the Sunday Express, Tom, about Rule Britannia?
Yeah, so Sheku Canny Mason, who many people will be aware of, he was the young black cellist who performed at Meghan Markle's and Prince Harry's wedding, as well as been a fixture at the proms and so on. So he's been on Desert Island Discs, and he's reignited the discussion about Rule Britannia on last night at the proms. So he said that he personally finds it uncomfortable. He's actually walked out when it was being performed previously.
Really? Why?
And it's just because of the fact that it's essentially its associations with jingoism or things of that nature seems to be what he's getting at. And he suggested that it be replaced with British folk music. So it sort of reignited that whole debate.
Folk music?
Yes.
British, English folk
British, which we
music.
have a long history of, to be fair.
What, at the end of last night at the proms?
Oh, yeah, well, I don't know what's jolly about it, but this story is interesting.
I've got a brand new song.
What do you think to that?
I would pay to see that.
No,
That would be
but
very
what's this?
amusing.
I love the proms. I go every year. I get a season ticket. I go to everything. I love all these reimaginings of classic works and stuff. But people love it. And also, the other thing about it is that the lyrics are actually very open for interpretation.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's because of this link with, the, you know, Britain shall never be slaves. It's that line that gets people. But actually, if you get rid of this stuff, you never think about the context, where we've come from in the past, where we've moved to. You know, I think it's really important to preserve stuff that we're not comfortable with.
And also,
then you can dissect
But we're
it.
sitting here and we're white thinking that.
Yeah.
Is it more uncomfortable? Because he's a very reasonable young man, isn't he? Is it much more uncomfortable if you've got a different background?
Of course, and I don't see any problem with him walking out. You know, he can do what he wants in that regard. But, you know, this thing of banning it, I don't know if that's the right way to go.
And also, it's hard to tell what the representative view, because there's going to be all kinds of views within ethnic minority communities about this stuff anyway. And also, when people are at last night at the proms waving the flags and enjoying themselves, the idea that they're there celebrating like British imperialism, it's just ridiculous. It's something that's traditional.
Except that song does.
But all kinds of national anthems, all kinds of different things from past have those kind of elements in them. They're often about triumph in war or conquest or all these kinds of things. But I think we can appreciate them in context. I also think there's a slight unfortunate undercurrent to this, which is almost like patriotic traditions are just for white people. That's a really dangerous thing to feed, I think, when, yes, people, you know, don't have to take these things literally. We can understand things in their context. But this kind of idea that anything that's a bit flag-wavy is just, by definition, exclusionary and racist, I think, is a road you don't want to go down.
Because, you know, I think about my mum-in-law, you know, she loves the royal family. She's from Myanmar, what was Burma originally. Loads of immigrants have got a really close relationship with British traditions. So it's just driving people
often
the other
much
way.
more patriotic.
Yes, exactly.
White Brits.
And, I mean, the point is, if you got rid of it, what would you replace it with? And there would just be endless debates.
Yeah.
You'd never get moving on it, would you?
You'd end up with something really dull in the middle of the road that no one could disagree with as
Or
well.
a bit of Vaughan Williams, and then that'd be very weird to put lyrics to.
Well, I mean, he wrote a thing on British folk music, didn't he? The Greensleeves and everything. And we have got the most fantastic songs, but they're not quite the same as Rule Britannia and Waving the Flag,
No.
are
And
they?
if you did traditional lyrics, it'd be all about, you know, knocking people off, because that's normally what folk songs are about.
Yeah.
Getting rid of the one that you don't want to marry and...
Oh,
Wait,
there you
next
go.
week's coming, honest.
Oh, there'll be other people complaining about it. You can't win. Can we talk just arthritis, Nikki? In the Sunday Express, there's some hope if you're suffering from arthritis.
Yeah, this is so important and such a great thing, because so many people do. My mum does, and it's debilitating. People think it's a little illness that older people get, but it's not. So actually, this is at the university of my old university, so it's nice to celebrate them. But what they've discovered is that they can use human stem cells that will regenerate tissue, and so you can actually not only prevent arthritis, but you can actually repair damaged tissues with this this new science. So obviously it's got to be trialled and all the rest of it, but it's just an amazing breakthrough.
Is this umbilical cord stuff? Is that what they get?
Yeah, where do you get the stem cells from?
They call them engineered human stem cells, so they're definitely not coming from actual people.
And this is rheumatoid arthritis, isn't it?
Yes,
I'm
it
never
is.
quite sure of the difference between rheumatoid and osteo, but I know they're both very, very different.
It's to do, I think it's to do with how the body, how the immune system attacks the body.
Right.
It's something to do with that difference.
Yes, that's right. In rheumatoid arthritis, your own cells attack your joints.
Yes, exactly.
And until now, there's very little can be done for it.
No, not all. People just suffer and live with it, and it's not
Yeah.
taken seriously. So, yeah, it's a good news science story for the morning.
That's good. I wonder if that'll get up and about and running reasonably quickly. Thank you very much indeed, you two. On things that may or may not work. Acupuncture. Kathy said I had acupuncture years ago for weight loss. I had a pin on my ear, and the idea was to press it every time you felt hungry. All that happened was I walked about looking like an idiot, and I was so fed up I put on half a stone.
Sorry. Oh, that's
Yeah.
really rotten.
It's great.
But you've got to
back
try
pain,
these
Stephen.
things.
I had a damaged shoulder and had dry needling. Best thing ever.
Really?
Just
So-
releases everything somehow.
It didn't work for me. It did not work for me, I have to say. Neither did having my shoulder popped. Colin points out, frozen shoulder, you can have injections squirt.
Did you have that?
I had that, and I just
Didn't work for you.
ended up having to go to hospital.
But you've got to keep...
It was so painful with that. But anyway, there you go. Everything's worth a try.
Yes.
That's the thing. Good to see you both this morning.
Yes,
Thank you. Before we let you go this hour, here's the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to today, it's turning very stormy. We have Storm Isha moving across the country as we go through the course of the next 24 hours. Initially, this morning across parts of East Anglia, South East England, we'll get off to a fairly dry, bright but chilly start. Elsewhere, we're seeing increasing cloud and these outbreaks of rain moving in. The rain will be heaviest and most persistent across parts of Scotland, northwest England and eventually into Wales too. And for many western parts, the wind's really increasing as the afternoon goes on. Technically, a very mild day for the time of year, but factor in the wind and rain, it's not going to feel anywhere near as mild as these temperatures suggest. Into the nighttime period, the wind and rain stretches right across the UK. Some very strong winds, especially across more northern and western parts, could see gusts reaching 70 to 80 miles an hour along some coastlines. So enough for some disruption as we start Monday morning. It does technically start off on a fairly mild note for the time of year, but do allow some extra time for some journeys because there could be, as I said, some disruption courtesy of Storm Isha. The winds will start to decrease as we go through a Monday morning, and really we'll see a day of sunny spells and scattered showers. Showers most frequent across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, but almost anyone will see the odd shower as the day goes on. Temperatures generally ranging between high single figures in the north, potentially double figures in the south.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, 9 o'clock on Sunday, the 21st of January. Today, Storm Isha set to cause havoc as the Met Office issues amber warnings over strong winds and heavy rain.
Craig Snell will keep you updated with your weather forecast.
Good morning. Storm Isha will bring plenty of wind and rain today across the country. Warnings are in force. Find out all the weather details in a little bit.
Jeremy Hunt has compared himself to tax-slashing former Chancellor Nigel Lawson as the government teases the prospect of tax cuts in the March budget.
And I'll bet you've not heard of this one before. Today is National Hugging Day. Are you a hugger or do you prefer to keep a social distance?
I do like a cuddle.
It
From
depends
people
who
I
with.
know.
Yeah.
Anyway, let us know what you think. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ann Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
I had a cuddle from Steph this morning.
Yes.
Do that actually
But
quite
you know
a lot.
Steph, and Steph knows you.
Yeah.
And you know each other's, with...
Boundaries.
Yeah, but if a total stranger just sort of said it's National Hugging Day, let's
me a
have a
cuddle.
hug. Not so keen.
No. Are you a hugger?
Well, I'm with family.
With family, yeah.
But no, otherwise. I think I might have been more of a hugger in the olden days. I would have been a kissy either side until COVID. And then I think I just learned that being a little more restrained is fine. Absolutely fine.
Yeah. Oh, well, let us know what you think.
you can be too huggy.
I do love a cuddle. But
Yeah,
really,
but with somebody you know is happy for you to do that, and somebody you know a bit.
You better have be. I married him.
Well, absolutely. Oh, that's different. Absolutely, family is different. But I think I just don't like people if they are encroaching on your personal space. They don't know you.
Yeah.
That's too much.
Oh, well, we've got a professional cuddler in this morning.
Yes, I know. It's
We'll see.
interesting.
I don't think she'll be getting anywhere near you.
She won't. But it's But do you think it's good for you to be able to cuddle people you love? Princess Diana was very keen on cuddling, wasn't she? Don't you remember? She used to talk about hugging a lot. And do you remember that very famous picture of her coming back after she'd just been on tour with Prince Charles and she'd been away from the children for quite a long time? And then she rushed, I think she was on the royal yacht, and she rushed onto the yacht and ran down the sidings to cuddle her boys. It's a very famous sort of sequence. But she always talked about how much good it can do you to have a cuddle. But with the right sort of person.
Let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.com. Now, we've been asking this morning whether the Tories can pull off a vote-winning budget in March ahead of the general election, as the Chancellor has teased potential tax cuts to relieve pressure on families, he says.
Ahead of the budget in March, he said the government's plan of prioritising tax relief is working and they will stick to it.
OK. Well, joining us ahead of her programme at 9:30 is Camilla Tominey. Morning, Camilla. I mean, there's no way of getting round this, is it? As nice as it might be, it's still an election gimmick, isn't it?
Always. I mean, the other problem for Jeremy Hunt is he and his administration have presided over the highest taxes in peacetime. So, I mean, he's now saying he wants to claw back some of this money for the taxpayer. Would it be a case of too little, too late? We know that income tax is at a historic high and it's only scheduled to go up. That's what the OBR and others have forecast at the last budget. So that's problematic for him. He's coming under pressure to bring income tax down. Also, there's this idea that maybe he might unfreeze the tax rate bands. You'll be familiar with this idea of fiscal drag and people on 52,000 a year or above being dragged into that higher rate of tax, which probably wasn't the initial intention for it. There's also pressure coming on the Tories to slash IHT, inheritance tax, but then they don't want to be accused by Labour of just slashing taxes for the rich. Having said that, you've then got the woman who wants to be the next Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, over at Davos, rubbing shoulders with business leaders and talking about the fact that even Labour might consider reducing taxes for those in that top bracket. So there's everything to pay for. But yeah, of course, it's populist. At the end of the day, where else can the Tories go on this? Tax and spend is at an all-time high. You've now got polling revealing that people feel the Labour Party is more responsible with the nation's finances. So at the end of the day, I think this is a kind of make or break budget for Jeremy Hunt. He's going to have to pull quite a spectacular rabbit out of the hat to ensure that the Tories can avoid electoral oblivion come the autumn.
Of course, it is said in today's newspapers that he's trying to emulate Nigel Lawson, who, of course, did a very similar thing. In fact, he slashed taxes and won Margaret Thatcher that election, didn't he? That's how he's credited.
I know, but people will be sort of perhaps sniggering slightly at the notion of him emulating Lawson, when so far there's been no evidence of that whatsoever. I mean, we know when Rishi Sunak was in the Treasury that he famously had a picture of the former Chancellor, as you say, Anne, extremely close to Thatcher, the one responsible for Thatcher's growth agenda, in his office. But unfortunately, neither Sunak nor Hunt seem to have emulated him at all when it comes to policy making and decision making on taxes. You know, you speak to people who are trying to start small businesses, they feel completely hamstrung, not just by the rise in corporation tax, but also endless regulation and form filling, which the Tories said they'd scrap. So I think it's, you know, high ambitions, and they'll want to distinguish themselves, by the way, from the Truss administration, because Lawson was all for growth, but not uncosted tax cuts, you know, not tax cuts on the basis of mass borrowing. So, yeah, we like the idea of that kind of growth-led agenda, but the proof of the pudding is going to be in the eating. And so far, we haven't seen much evidence of this. You know, the autumn statement gave a few things away. It talked about expensing when it came to businesses. Actually, I think businesses just want taxes to be cut per se. Equally, you're going to have to make a really huge retail offering. You're going to have to be talking about cutting tax per p in the pound for people to understand it at this late stage. And I think quite a lot of people have sort of given up on some of these pledges already.
Talking about a growth-led agenda, what are we to make of the Labour Party? We've been bleating on forever and a day about the green growth agenda, right? Whether you think that's going to be good news or not, they've sort of pinned their flag to the mast. First, it was delayed, 6 months ago or so. They said they were going to set it back a period of time. Now, according to the Times over the last couple of days, it's being scrapped altogether. So have they got any plans left?
Yeah. Well, this is also playing into the Tory argument that Keir Starmer is Captain Flip-Flop, right? They've had this 28 billion green prosperity pledge. It was initially tabled by Rachel Reeves. She then had to row back on it, saying the fiscal circumstances might not allow it to be carried out in the first year that they're in office. It was once a target, now it's becoming an ambition. And as you say, Stephen, it now seems to have been diluted even further. So again, you've got the key pledge at the heart of Keir Starmer's future manifesto, we think, sort of lying in tatters. I shall be putting this to Stephen Kinnock because I'm going to be interviewing him. He's the immigration minister, but I'll ask him also about the idea of Labour being ahead in the polls as a party, but Keir Starmer still tanking. Obviously, Stephen Kinnock, being the son of Neil Kinnock, knows a little bit about Labour leadership. On these other issues, by the way, of course, I'll be putting those questions to Grant Shapps, the Defence Secretary. He's coming on. There's a great deal to discuss with him, with everything going on in the Red Sea currently. I'm also going to be speaking to, who else have I got on the show? I've got Barry Gardner coming on talking about whether we should scrap leaseholds altogether. I've got Robert Jenrick coming on. He's obviously been a thorn in the government's side over the Rwanda bill. Where does he think this is headed? Because the Lords, of course, are now coming back and saying, we're going to thwart this plan. We're completely unelected, but at the same time, we want to stop the Rwanda bill. Where does that leave Rishi Sunak's pledge to stop the boats? So as ever, I've got a very, very busy show coming up at 9:30.
Yeah, you always get meaty guests,
Great
Camilla.
guests. Yeah.
Really good. We'll see you at 9:30. Thanks very much indeed.
Right, the other big topic today, something we all need to know about, is the weather. And the Met Office has issued an upgraded amber wind warning for large parts of the UK.
Yeah, Storm Isha is just the latest named storm, the 9th that we've had recently, and she's set to bring heavy rain and winds of up to 80 or 90 miles an hour.
So let's cross live to GB News' South West of England reporter Jeff Moody and find out how he's getting on, standing there in the middle of Exmoor.
I am indeed. Well, it's all quite quiet at the moment. The calm before the storm, it most certainly is, because in the next few hours we are expecting things to change drastically. As you say, it's the 9th named storm of the season. The meteorological season begins in September, and this is the earliest we've ever got to I in the alphabet. So we have seen more storms than normal. You can probably hear the winds beginning to pick up at the moment. But what is particularly rare about this storm is it's going to affect the whole of the UK. Nobody will be able to avoid it. Now, the weather warnings are in place, as you say. The first is for parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, Northern England, plus down here in the southwest of England too. We always seem to get it worse here. Those weather warnings will be in place from 6 o'clock tonight, and that will run until 9 o'clock on Monday. And then 3 hours later, a separate amber wind warning begins. That's covering most of Scotland, and it expires on Monday. And then a third weather warning will be in place for Kent, East Sussex and West Sussex, and that starts at midnight on Monday and ending at 9 a.m. So a little bit later if you're down in the southeast, but elsewhere, do get prepared. Now, the usual warnings are in place. Try and stay away from the coast if you possibly can. There's a real risk of death, says the Met Office, if you're walking on a beach, perhaps walking your dogs, and then the winds are more ferocious than you think, and the waves are more ferocious than you think. And always that warning to steer clear of flying debris. In those strong winds, things do tend to blow quite hard, and it is best to try and steer clear of the coast where that's worse. Also, they say steer clear of rural roads because there's a very real damage of trees coming down too. But apart from that, the best advice I can give is, if you possibly can today, stay in. It's a Sunday, cook a roast and just look at it from out the window.
What I want to know, Jeff, is how you get if we're keeping you out there all day to monitor things. A, have you got a flask of tea? And B, how are you going to keep your tripod up?
It's a very personal question.
I know. Well, I'm just going to have to hold the tripod. I mean, at the moment it's all right, but sometimes, you know, you're kind of holding it and it's doing all of this and it is all a bit dodgy. But yeah, I should be all right if I just hold it. I haven't actually got a flask of tea, but there is a place that I can go and get some tea in just a moment, so I'll be all right. Thank you for worrying about me, though, Stephen.
I mean, all we know is that you're in Exmoor, but whereabouts are you? Because it does look lovely and green and leafy and mountainous behind. Well, not mountainous, but, you know, beautiful countrified behind you.
Yes.
Oh, no answer.
Oh, we've put him off.
He's somewhere in Exmoor. He didn't hear that. Obviously, maybe it's getting blustery out there.
So we've just... they've just came off.
I know. Didn't mean to.
Oh, dear. Shame. Never mind. Poor Jeff, he's there. He's probably still talking to himself now, going, well, actually, Anne, thanks for that lovely question. Yeah. It's marvellous. He's probably mid-conversation. He's still going. Hey! Never mind. Right, you've done now, Jeff.
Yeah, you're done.
The time's gone. Apologies.
Oh.
Get off.
You asked me a question and then you were talking to yourselves. How rude.
No, it's because we cut you. I know the pitch you went. Never mind. Just get off, Jeff. Go and have a cup of tea.
Yes, exactly. Deserve one.
While you can. In the meantime, let's see what the weather is going to do where you are this morning. Check out the details for you with Craig.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to today, it's turning very stormy. We have Storm Isha moving across the country as we go through the course of the next 24 hours. Initially, this morning, across parts of East Anglia, southeast England, we'll get off to a fairly dry, bright but chilly start. Elsewhere, we're seeing increasing cloud and these outbreaks of rain moving in. The rain will be heaviest and most persistent across parts of Scotland, northwest England, and eventually into Wales too. And for many western parts, the winds really increasing as the afternoon goes on. Technically, a very mild day for the time of year, but factor in the wind and rain, it's not going to feel anywhere near as mild as these temperatures suggest. Into the nighttime period, the wind and rain stretches right across the UK. Some very strong winds, especially across more northern and western parts, could see gusts reaching 70 to 80 miles an hour along some coastlines. So enough for some disruption as we start Monday morning. It does technically start off on a fairly mild note for the time of year, but do allow some extra time for some journeys because there could be, as I said, suffered some disruption courtesy of Storm Isha. The winds will start to decrease as we go through a Monday morning, and really we'll see a day of sunny spells and scattered showers. Showers most frequent across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, but almost anyone will see the odd shower as the day goes on. Temperatures generally ranging between high single figures in the north, potentially double figures in the south.
Oh, there you go. Loads of you getting in touch this morning. We've been talking about loads of different things. I love the fact that they just pick up on loads of stuff. Hearing aids we were talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Just through that. Keith and Geordie have been in touch, and it's, if you think modern hearing aids are good, you should think about the bone-anchored hearing aids. They cost a fortune, but they allow the completely deaf to hear as normal. And you've probably seen these about. It's when people have
bone-anchored.
Something sort of on the back.
You have an implant somewhere as well, though, don't you?
So it's sort of slightly intrusive, and you can see. You often see children with them when they're sort of completely deaf or whatever. But apparently it's absolutely phenomenal because it makes these sort of bits vibrate that you need to hear.
Yeah, it's sort of almost attached to the bone itself, so it vibrates through the head.
It's very clever. Stuff like that is amazing.
And we were also talking about vaccination and the fact that measles rates are going up.
Yeah.
Peter in Devon said vaccination is so important. In the USA, you can't go to university unless you've had all the vaccinations against all the major infections.
Really?
That's interesting.
That's interesting. And just a quick one on irritating neighbours. Martin raises a very good point. He said, I always find that if someone wants to hang something on a fence, it's theirs. If the wind blows it down and it needs replacing, then it's mine. I've had that issue.
I don't understand that.
Well,
if someone wants to hang something on a fence, it's theirs.
If they want to use it, it belongs to them if there's an argument. If it blows down and needs replacing, they won't pay for it.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yes.
Oh, neighbours and the way they get involved in each other's lives.
Yes, I've ended up paying for fencing on both sides, which can't be right.
No, but at least you've got the power of ownership.
Power of ownership, yeah, and
the responsibility.
A smaller bank account as a result. It's not cheap fencing.
No, and then you have to take responsibility for it if it blows down and falls on somebody.
Don't even go there. Not today.
We've had enough weather warnings today, I think.
Anyway, look, still to come, and you may need one of these today. It's National Hugging Day. Are you a hugger, or would you like to keep your distance? We'll explore it in a moment.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel. 2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
9:20 now. Do you like a hugger? We're saying, but I call it cuddling, like a cuddle. I cuddle off my mother.
Oh yeah.
Actually, a cuddle off your mum is lovely. And the older you get, and the older they get, the more you appreciate it. Do you cuddle your boys a lot?
Yes, and the more they get older and you get older, the more you have to stand on a chair just to be able to hug them, because they're like you. They're so tall. I'm hugging them round their waist. You know, where's their head? It's up there.
Oh, still, that doesn't matter. Anyway, it's National Hugging Day today. Observed every year, would you believe it or not, on January the 21st.
The idea of it is lovely. It's to encourage everyone to hug family and friends more often, because you never know when the last time will be.
Oh, that's
and it's
so
nice
true.
to always... Well, it is. It sounds a bit morose to say it, but, you know, it's important to speak with a hug or to speak with physical.
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, let's talk to cuddle therapist Mariana Halossi, who's here. Good to see you this morning.
Good morning.
Now, there will be people watching, and actually, when I saw your sort of job title, that I myself, even as a cuddler, thought cuddle therapist. But so what actually does that entail? What are you trying to achieve?
Okay, there's different things we try to achieve, and it all depends on the client's needs. So I try to tailor everything for them. Some people want to be connected, just because they are so isolated, they don't have anybody to cuddle, anybody even to touch them. They just want to feel touched and loved and connected to someone. Some people want healing, like if they were sexually abused when they were a child. They don't know how it feels to be safe in someone's arms, and that's where I come in.
That's tragic, isn't it?
It is.
Can you get over that? Can you get through that?
Yes. So when I get someone who you think that it's a strong man, and then you cuddle them, and 5 minutes later they look up to you and they say, "This is the first time ever in my life I feel safe." I think that's something that's really beautiful and amazing.
That must take a long time to overcome something like abuse as a child or even abuse as an adult, domestic abuse, to actually learn it's about trust, isn't it?
It's trust, and that's where the cuddling comes in. So when we cuddle for a longer period of time, you know, the hormone oxytocin comes in, and then the cuddling and being safe, it allows you to trust yourself, trust the other, and trust the healing as well. So you can be with the feeling, process it, and then you can let it go. Because lots of people, that's why we don't deal with emotions. It doesn't have to be sexual abuse, any kind of anger or whatever the emotion is. We don't deal with it because we don't feel it's safe to feel the feeling. But the feeling is not us, it's just a projection of what happened to us or a conditioning or whatever the case is.
It seems very odd, to me, that people would have to employ someone for a cuddle. But that's because I've always been in the type of family where you have
comes
cuddles.
naturally, yeah.
The idea that people just aren't having that physical contact at all really upsets me, actually.
Yeah.
Because there's something so beautiful about it.
It is. There'll be people who are lonely. And I tell you what, I noticed it when I was recently quite ill in hospital, is that nurses are taught this, aren't they? And paramedics are taught this. They hold your hand. It's one of the first things. And it almost makes you want to burst into tears. It's so wonderful to have another human being reach out and hold your hand like that.
Looking after you, even just touching your shoulder wearing their bed.
Yeah. I'm so glad they obviously do teach that to nurses and paramedics.
What about those people who aren't, in ordinary life, people who haven't got a problem or whatever, who aren't particularly comfortable? They like their own space a bit more. How do you encourage that? Would you encourage them to have more of a cuddle?
Well, it depends. If someone really doesn't want to be touched, they're not going to come to a cuddle therapist. But if someone knows that it's a barrier that they have and they want to overcome it, go into a relationship, but that's stopping them, then they come, and then we do just baby steps. I don't just going to jump on them and cuddle them. So sometimes we just hold hands and sit for an hour, and then the next time we can, the legs can touch and we sit closer.
Yeah.
There's a process that has to be implemented there because
And
I need to keep them safe.
It's a physical, chemical thing that's happening to us when we are touching each other, when we cuddle each other.
Yes, so the hormone oxytocin, it gets released, and that's the happy hormone that keeps you feel really lovely things. And then at the cortisol level, it decreases, so the stress decreases as well, and it allows you to sleep better, be more chilled out. Sometimes people don't do things for themselves to rest.
Just very briefly, because sometimes when I have a cuddle at home, sometimes I just don't want to let go.
Yeah.
And I get told, right, that's enough now.
Yeah.
That's enough now.
Know when to stop.
Am I allowed to say, no, I need this for a bit longer?
Of course.
Oh, good.
So we've got boundaries and content. I don't do anything they are not allow me, and yes.
There you are. He always wants more.
I always want more. Mariana, great to see you. Thank you very much
so much.
indeed. That's it from us. Camilla Tomlin is here next, but let's get a check on your weather.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside